track got tore up a little Friday night.
Not super bad, but yeah, we obviously started with a pretty wet one, you know, so I was down there at noon just making laps with a big tractor. They were just slow and letting it just pack in, pack it dry, pack it in dry.
Hopefully you don't get a whole heck of a lot of heavy rain tomorrow night.
Yeah. I'm hoping it's, we can deal with tomorrow night, but it'd be nice to have Friday and Saturday overnight.
Okay, live stream's up and posted. I've got 6:30, so I'll call to order the Monday, July 13th meeting of the Darlington Community School District Board of Education. Teresa, do you acknowledge public notice?
Yes.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Okay, we have Mr. Jackson here. Is Aaron Lancaster on Zoom?
He is.
Marie Bronco,
Here.
Chris,
Here.
Hermanson,
Here.
Reichling. Here. Rickers,
Here.
Schilling,
Here.
Siegenthaler here, Wolf,
Here.
Zuberbuehler.
Here.
Okay, item 3 is call for special appearance. Is anyone present here, or do we know of anyone who wanted to speak tonight?
I have my email on it. People email on the agenda that address, I'll share it.
Okay, we'll move on then to item 4, adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Zuberbuehler, second by Hermanson to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 5 is the treasurer's report. See that attached in board book. Is there any questions or comments on the treasurer's report? That's on there separate from approval of the bills. Not that it matters, I guess. So we'll move on to item 6, approval of minutes from our regular board meeting on June 15th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Schilling, second by Bronco to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 7 is approval of the bills for payment. Bob, RJ, and Matt reviewed those via email.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Schilling, second by Reichling to approve the bills for payment. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item 8, discussion and action regarding donations. Sub-item A, Gloria Boatman would like to donate to the DEM Service Learning Activity Account in support of the Rosie Bags program.
Motion to approve and thank her.
Motion by Hermanson, second by Reichling to approve that donation with our thanks. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item B, Richard Rock would like to donate materials to the high school art department.
Motion to approve and thank him.
Motion by Schilling, second by Reichling to approve that donation with our thanks. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 9, discussion and action regarding WIAA proposal to move, excuse me, to move fall sports to spring and spring sports to summer.
There's a proposal circulating out of CISA 3. 31 districts in this area so far have expressed support for it, some degree or another, some by just the administrator, some at the board level. The ones that I know of that haven't expressed at the board level support are only because they haven't had a meeting yet. I think it's pretty unanimous that everyone down here is for taking all fall sports and moving them to the spring, and taking spring sports and moving them to the summer. One possible tweak that I heard would be move fall sports to the spring and then try to play the spring sports in the fall, knowing that they're probably going to be canceled at some point, and then when they are, then move them to the summer, but make an effort to get them in the fall first. But this proposal is fall sports to the spring and spring sports to the summer. And if you're in favor of supporting this, we'll add our board to the list of people for it.
Just a couple questions on it, Cale. So this is just coming from CISA 3, correct?
Yep, our director sent this out statewide and asked for support from other CISAs. He just did that recently.
Okay.
And I just checked my email before I came in there, and he had heard back from a couple of people that said they were supportive too, and they were going to start the process of getting support CISA-wide, but for now, it's just us.
Now, my understanding is tomorrow, is there a superintendent meeting with the WIA, or am I missing something?
It might be a listening session.
Okay.
I don't know, we're not going to be able to provide input.
Okay. I guess I was just informed over the weekend by an athletic director that there was a meeting with the superintendents in the WIA tomorrow. That's not true?
I'm not planning on attending it.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if it was a bit virtual or something of that nature. Okay.
Zub, is it a board of control meeting or with
I'm
superintendent?
not sure. I was just told by a Division I athletic director that there was a meeting tomorrow with the WIA to discuss as far as the plan moving forward as to what the state might do.
Okay.
There's nothing on their calendar.
Yeah.
Just not one.
Okay.
Maybe they're having some kind of like round table with a few chosen ones or something.
Right.
That's why I asked if it was board of control, because that's made up of superintendents from around the state. So,
Right.
you know, yeah, I mean, they're ultimately going to make the decision,
Right.
you know, regardless of what we do, but kind of makes sense. Postponement's better than cancellation.
I'm 100% in agreement. I mean, anything we can do to salvage a season or multiple seasons, I'm for it.
Yep.
Well, and that's the argument of the whole thing is, I think a lot of people believe that if we start things in normal in the fall, more than likely, there's going to be a lot of forfeitures or complete cancellations. Whereas if we move this to where we kind of go a winter, fall, spring season later in the year, it's the best opportunity to get everything in there and give the kids the most opportunities. So
We should always be playing summer baseball anyway, right, Aaron?
I played it for a long time. Nothing wrong with it.
Yep.
And our fall coaches are okay with it. So I'll make a motion to approve putting our name on the list.
Second.
Yeah, there's a motion by Reichling, a second by Brunko to attach our name to the list of support for the proposal to move fall sports to the spring and spring sports to the summer. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Has CISA 3 given us any kind of indication on a time frame for this or when they plan to present it to the WIA or
Yes, very soon, like tomorrow. Practices are starting like next week.
So if the WIA does nothing, I mean, just stands pat with how things are, the season will proceed and as well as it can.
WIA has said they're committed to providing opportunity and setting up a tournament for anybody who's able to participate.
And we don't know of any schools that have on their own decided not to do fall sports at this point.
There's a meeting next week of area ADs and conference commissioners. They basically waited until next week because they're trying to let school boards decide what the plan for the school year is going to be. And then the idea is they will discuss as a conference, you know, what the fall sports season might look like if it stays a fall sports season.
Okay.
Do we think this has any chance of going through?
So far from what I've seen from the WA, I'd say slim. They haven't grown receptive yet. This idea's been out there for a while.
Okay.
I think a lot of the reluctance before was previously people had suggested flipping fall sports and spring sports. And the spring sport coaches are saying, well, you canceled ours last year and now you're going to cancel them again. And so that's partly why they were reluctant to do it. Now with spring moving to summer, it might have a better chance.
How's the audio, guys? Are you having a hard time hearing some people?
If you're not right at the microphone, it's very muffled.
Okay, so people in the back, I guess, speak up a little bit if you could. We're using a new mic and camera here, so we're getting the bugs out. Okay, any other discussion on that item? We'll move on then to item 10, discussion and action regarding the 2021 preliminary budget.
I prepared a preliminary budget, sent it to you earlier in the week. A lot of variables that go into this are not known at this time. The major factors that go into the budget are how many students do we have? What's our property values do and how much aid are we getting from the state? I have preliminary estimates from the state on the aid, and the other two, you're just trying to make educated guesses, you know, for the enrollment and for the property values. I estimated a significant drop in enrollment from summer school because we know that's going to happen here, and an increase next fall of 10 students. For the last 2 or 3 years, we've been going up rapidly. I think last year was 29 increases. I don't know if that's going to continue or not. I figured an increase of 10, but then when you consider that almost being canceled out by a significant decrease in the summer school, put it all together, and it came out with amount of the taxes of right at 4 million for local taxes, which is almost identical to last year. And if that all happens that way, the mill rate, the tax rate would drop a little bit because of the extra aid from the state, the way things working out. So we're looking at approximately a tax rate of 11.89 if this all happens.
Refresh me again, Ken. What were we this year for tax rate?
11.95.
Okay.
And the year before that was 12.42.
Okay.
So let's be down to 11.89.
Okay.
I just feel the need to say one more time, it will not be 11.89. I'm almost certain by the time it's over, but there's a lot of unknowns right now, but it's looking like that's the best estimate.
Biggest factor is what the valuation comes in at. Our district valuation can have a lot of.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on property values, and I estimated an increase of 1.5% in purchase.
It's been going up the last few years steadier, more than close to 5-6%, but they're not that old. So the whole this year, not who knows and stuff.
So this would be like more toward worst case scenario.
Okay.
Any other discussion about the preliminary budget?
Need action on this preliminary budget.
We don't need action on that, do we, Cal?
Yeah, I think so. If you don't mind, just approve it and then we can get it ready for the annual meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Bronco, second by Hermanson to approve the preliminary budget as discussed. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 11, discussion and action regarding designating academic standards.
We're required every year to share with the community at this time which standards we will be adhering to in the upcoming year. So I'll just say that we're looking at Common Core standards for the reading areas, National Science Standards for science, and Wisconsin standards for social studies. So both the principals are here. If they have anything to add to that.
Common Core for math too.
Common Core for math.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Chris, second by Reichling to approve designating those academic standards. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 12, discussion and action regarding EMC insurance proposal.
This is our annual renewal. Every 3 to 5 years, we go out and get bids to make sure that things are in line. That just happened last year, so we didn't do that again this year. If you look through all of the different coverages, they all had an increase from last year to this year in the range of what I would consider to be reasonable, 4% increase. But when you put the total together, our total insurance premium is $7,000 less than it was last year. All areas had a reasonable increase except for our workers' comp coverage dropped way down. That's predetermined based on the claims that you've had. And I don't know exactly how the formula works, but obviously we had a large claim some number of years ago, 10 years ago or something, that just dropped off our rating system. And so a significant decrease in workers' comp. Put it all together and it's lower total than it was last year.
Motion to approve.
Again,
Motion by Reichling, second by Chris to approve the EMC insurance proposal. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 13, discussion and action regarding K-5 online math curriculum.
the math curriculum we're using the K-5 area is called Math Expressions, and it's an online subscription-based service. It also comes with consumable materials that the kids use, so it's not all computer-based, but it's partially. It's time to renew our subscription. 3 years for K-5 with all the consumable things and the online part is going to be $47,000. That, to me, has got a little bit of sticker shock with it. It seems like a high number, a big number, and probably because it is, but if you break it down over 3 years and over 6 grades, it's more in a reasonable category. We have Gene O'Neill here with us tonight that can answer questions if you had about it, but we're happy with it so far and we'd like to renew it.
Is this cost comparable to what we've been paying per year, or is it an increase over?
It's very comparable. In working with my rep, she actually gave us about a 10% discount and is throwing in free shipping and handling, which saved us over $1,000 to get all the materials here. One of the reasons we're updating is their program was all on Adobe Flash, which is no longer going to be supported at the end of 2020. So they've gone to an HTML5, and that's going to have in all the built-in updates and any rollouts we need for 3 years. So we would not have to purchase any additional. And that proposal also includes professional development for teachers. With the new version, we have been using math expressions, but just the amount of online things they're offering now, our teachers are excited to try some of those digital tools, especially if we have to go virtual again. So, and a lot of differentiation built in that I didn't see before in the program. So they're staying with the times and really adhering to what students need.
So does this come out of our textbooks budget each year? What is that for?
It'd be like the curriculum area, yeah.
I was just wondering if we'd still get other textbooks this year, or this is what we're using now for?
Well, this would be everything that we would need for those grades.
Sure.
We may still have other areas, but as far as I know, we don't have any other textbook needs right now.
We just got the civics.
The only one that is possible is 6-8 may need to upgrade as well. They don't use math expressions,
Okay.
but I know last year I gathered a lot of samples of different programs and they were looking at changing and upgrading, but hadn't come to a consensus of one they all really liked and agreed on. They were going to do some research over the summer and see where we were at.
Just quickly in looking at the bid, so this, and we're a little muffled in the background, but so this does not include the any dual language or this, that there may be an additional purchase of Spanish math expressions.
Exactly. We can purchase additional Spanish materials depending on what is needed.
Do we have a rough estimate what that will be from a cost standpoint?
I mean, in this, you would think it'd be needed, so if there's a number, we need to know.
But right now, a lot of their things that are digital online are already available in Spanish.
Correct.
We may need to purchase additional consumables in Spanish. But when a student would log on to do.
Right. I understand that. Just do we have a estimate just to swag of what that cost would be?
I had a proposal, it was under 5,000, and that was, I think I did 120 students, which is way more than what we will need.
And that's yearly?
That would be for 3 years.
3 years. Is this,
Okay.
Is that a 1 year?
well, I don't know, what it sounds, but.
So this is a cost that is going to be recurring every 3 years, roughly. I mean,
Exactly. But with no cost to upgrade or add any more consumables in year 2 or 3. So we'll get consumables this year and next year and year 3. So this will cover, like Kale said, it'll cover everything we need for 3 years solidly.
So it does look to be a significant cost savings over 3 year versus just doing it for 1 year.
Yeah.
Is this similar to what we've purchased in the past? I mean, is it comparable dollar wise? How many years has it been since we did something similar to this?
5 years ago, we purchased a 5-year license.
And what was the dollar amount then? Do you know, Kale?
I don't offhand. She was saying that it was comparable.
Right, but to see actual numbers, I mean, that's, you know, that would be comparable to see them on paper. But so is this something we have in the budget going forward too? I mean, I know we have a budget for it, but.
Yeah, I did. I put it in the preliminary budget to get it ready for tonight. I tried to find the cost of this 5 years ago, what we paid. Sheila and I looked through the books and it was just, we weren't able to figure it out because we bought multiple things from this vendor and the way things were labeled 5 years ago, we were having trouble figuring out what was exactly what, but
Didn't we, this would be included, Joe, I think, wasn't it like 1 or 2 years ago that we started including budgeting up to 40,000 per year? If I recall that figure for
Yeah.
textbooks and things. So, I mean, this is in line. So basically it's going to be closer to a little over about 52,000 if you add the other $5,000 in, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when will we know what that final price is then?
At this point, we're not looking to purchase that. I need to do some communication with our bilingual teachers. We're doing some WebEx training to see how much materials they would need for the students.
Okay.
I don't want to go ahead and purchase everything and it's going to sit on the shelf. Because we have some of our students that can read the Spanish and would need everything in Spanish. We have other students that just need it verbally. So it's kind of a wait and see on what the bilingual teachers recommend.
Would you start the school year and then purchase afterwards?
Yes.
So do you recommend we just table it till we know all those things?
We need to approve the 47,000 for K-5, and then we may have to come back for the Spanish component.
I'll make a motion to approve the K-5.
Second.
Motion by Zuberbuehler, second by Chris to approve the K-5 online math curriculum for roughly 47,000.
My only concern is I don't think if we're going to do this, wait until the school starts. Why aren't we? I mean, we should be prepared when school starts. What I guess my perception would be.
It's a matter of having the bilingual teachers look at the program on what you've approved to purchase tonight to see if there's enough in the program for the students, or do we need to purchase additional?
But we can't do that before school starts.
We could, yes. I can probably get that set up and get those teachers on board.
They're gonna be coming together for some other training, so that's something that we can do at that time.
But that price you had was up to 120 students.
Right.
It may be less, so that price could be even less.
And I did 120, not even thinking this program only goes up to 5th grade. We don't use it in grade 6, 12.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I think that's.
Maybe sitting Wayne just a little bit, it might not be so bad either.
right.
Yeah.
All right, is there any further discussion on the motion for the K-5 online math curriculum? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 14, discussion and action regarding 4th grade Reading Wonders curriculum.
So grades 1 through 4 use what we call the Wonders reading curriculum. Last year was the first year grade 4 used Wonders. And I was able to have them do that as a pilot. So the district received $15,000 to $20,000 of free materials to implement in 4th grade. Part of that implementation included the online digital resource where the students were able to take all the assessments online, all the stories were online, there was enrichment, there was remedial activities. The 4th grade needs to renew that online digital portion for next year for the students. Our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, they already are renewed until 2021. So by renewing 4th grade this year, next year we can renew all 4 grades at the same time. Lori, do you have that number in front of you? I did not print that off, that quote.
This one, 4,184.70.
And that was for how many students? Did I?
Was that 4,184.70, did you say?
Yeah.
Yep.
65 is what you have for quantity.
And I don't know how accurate that number is right now for fourth grade.
Well, there's two different numbers on that quote too. There's another one at 1,092.
First page is 6 year, Jean. That I have the.
Yeah, and then the second year is a 1 year. So you can do either, you can do a 6 year for the 4,000 or 1 year for the $1,092.
But our goal is to do the 1 year and get everybody on the same page, correct?
And then you'll do them all together.
To do them all at the same
Exactly.
time.
Then we can do them all at 6 years, so that way
Sure.
every license, it's just easier since I manage all of those licenses to have them all renew at the same time. I'm being a little selfish, but when
So you
you're,
want to do it for 1 year?
I like to do it for 1 year.
I'll make a motion to approve it for 1 year.
Second.
Motion by Chris, second by Hermanson to approve the fourth grade Reading Wonders curriculum for 1 year. As quoted. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Item 15, discussion and action regarding Redbirds on Broadway Summer School.
I sent you all a layout of kind of what my plan is. I don't know if you have a copy or want a copy. I do have copies for you. Before I get started, though, I want to say thank you for the graduation ceremony. It was very nice and it was well worth the wait. And I appreciate the time because I didn't know what you know.
Can- Excuse me, can she move up to the microphone?
Yeah, she's really muffled.
I have a thick mask. So I have 13 Redbirds on Broadway kids online right now. We've done 5 days. And then I have 17, well, not quite 17 yet. If we go face to face, a couple more are going to be joining Children's Theater. So it's not just Redbirds on Broadway that I'm here to talk about, but Children's Theater also. And basically what I'm asking is, if I can't have the 13 at a time and 17 at a time, if I could split them into two groups, and I've altered them, like, so if I'm able to go face to face tomorrow, 6 kids are going to come to school and they're going to work on their acts. We're just going to be dancing and speaking, no singing at all. Then the next group comes on Wednesday, and I think that's 7 kids for Redbirds, 9 for Children's Theater. My plan is that Lee has said that he has some special paint I can put on the grass. I plan on having them in a straight line. I'm not going to have rows unless I can go 13 and 17. Each kid has been told several times, their parents have been told several times that I would like them to stay within that rectangle. They are to bring their own drinks and snacks. Because Children's Theater, a lot of times we provided that for the kids, but they're to bring their own in a cooler. And I don't know what else to ask, I guess. The one thing that was brought up, I probably have to take temperatures. Not sure if you want the kids in masks outside. I can be in a mask, I'm fine with that. I have a microphone system that I would be using and a speaker for the kids to hear the music.
I think I emailed you a copy of her plan just an hour ago. If I didn't, I will do it later.
And if it's a bad day, we're gonna go virtual. The little kids for Redbirds on Broadway have been doing pretty well with Zoom, which has been surprising to me. The older kids, we had our first meeting today, and I can tell that they're gonna hate it. In fact, I'll have, if I can't go face to face for Redbirds, I know 2 have said they're done. They won't do it anymore. And Children's Theater, I have 3 that will do it if they can come to face to face.
I personally don't have an issue with 13 or 17. I think we're allowing that many in the weight room and the basketball gyms. So I don't have an issue with those numbers together, or if you want to separate them out. As far as the mask is concerned, I would say that's personal opinion. We don't have any kind of city, county guideline that says you have to wear one. So I would say that's up to you and the parents and the kids.
I think being outside too, I check the wind direction, you know, have all that in place too, that try to keep it so it is.
I'm very impressed with your plan. You obviously put a lot of thought into it. And
Well, I know the kids that I have, you know, are wanting to do it as much as they can. And
This will all be outside, correct?
Yep, all
Okay.
outside. We're not gonna come in. Again, when it's storming, like tomorrow, I'm gonna really check the radar for tomorrow afternoon, but Wednesday, we already planned.
As far as masks go, I think you're gonna be okay as long as you can keep those kids from if you can social distance them 6 feet, you should be okay, according to the current data. The only issue would be if you plan on doing any singing, then I would say you definitely should put masks on those kids. Any yelling, screaming, singing is considered aerolization, and even 6 feet is still considered high risk. So
10 feet is the recommendation now.
yeah.
For swimming, at least. One more point I wanted to ask was, one of the ninth graders asked about performance. Since we had the graduation ceremony outside on the football field area, if that would maybe be a possibility for them as well. And I said, you could decide today, but then when it gets closer to August, it's the first week of August that we would be performing. You know, we may not be able to do that, but we are planned, ready to do either Zoom or there's an a cappella app or using iMovie and Flipgrid and everything to have a virtual performance. But the kids, of course, you know, especially the older ones are used to live people being there, but.
Sure.
Did everything go okay with the kindergarten graduation?
They haven't had it yet.
Oh, they haven't.
But our first day of summer school went really well. Kids did a good job.
How much has this changed, or is this similar, basically the same plan you originally submitted? I don't think that we saw that at the board meeting where we discussed it, but then I was able to see a copy of it, and that was very complete and detailed. Is this really similar to that?
It pretty well is. My numbers have dropped since then. I had a higher number of kids. And I'm not sure why, you know, being on Zoom or whatever, they decided not to do it this year. Taking temperatures, I added that. Otherwise, it's pretty well the same idea that I had before.
I thought it was very detailed and it sounded perfectly safe to me anyway.
I've been doing a lot of research.
So yeah, I liked your plan.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve, and as far as you put on a performance, I got no problems with that, but keep in mind, things could possibly change come then. That's where I'm at.
Would you say Caleb, Lori, and Tina just make the decision sometime?
Sure. Yeah, but let your students be aware that this is ever-changing times and it could possibly change.
Yeah. Do you want the groups to be smaller or you?
I'm okay with what she's got, as long as we are all okay with that.
I'm okay with it. I'll second that
Motion
motion.
by Chris, second by Hermanson to approve the Redbirds on Broadway / Children's Theater proposal with a performance to be approved by administration. Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Sure.
You don't? Okay.
I'm okay with that. And
By
thanks.
administration or by the board?
Appreciate it.
Well, so if the motion says by administration, then it's not going to require board action. You know, if something
Correct.
changes, it's on the administrators. You guys okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I just have one question, Tina. Do you think if we go face to face, you'll have some of those kids that maybe originally were thinking about it want to come back?
The two that just dropped this morning, I think it's more of, because we have a smaller group, some of them are a little bit nervous about performing, yeah. So the two that dropped out this morning, I have a feeling that's why they did. don't foresee probably adding to this number at this time.
All right, is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tina.
I'll be talking to you tomorrow.
Item 16 is discussion and action regarding refinancing the energy efficiency debt.
The way interest rates are going now, we have an opportunity to refinance our energy efficiency debt and see significant savings. We discussed this at the last meeting with the goal of having something ready for final approval here tonight. I don't have it ready for final approval tonight because when the bank that is currently at Mineral Point got word that we were pulling this 3.3 million out of there and refinancing it, they contacted me and asked if they would have an opportunity to lower the interest rate, would we consider just leaving it there? And I said yes, and then so between Baird and me and this bank, we've been working on things. And that's gonna end up being our recommendation, to leave it there where it is at the Farmers Bank in Mineral Point. They came down to an interest rate that was right in line with what we could do somewhere else. I just recently sent you a schedule. You don't have to have it in front of you, but what's gonna happen if you agree to this is you're not allowed to increase your payments on an energy efficiency loan. The state won't let you prepay the principal. So with a lower interest amount, we are allowed to make the same dollar amount of payment that we were scheduled to make, and more of it will be going to principal now since the interest is less. And there was a balloon payment that we were supposed to have in the last year of 2027 of $778,000. I'm proposing that we just leave all our other payments the same until then. And then that one will go down from 778 to 657. So our payments the next 5 years will be just 6 years what they would have been. And our last one will save 120,600.
Savings of 120,000, no brainer, isn't it?
No brainer.
Regardless of what bank we get the.
And this is the same rate we would get if we went with the other bank. It was the same quote. And so we've had good experience with the Mineral Point people and may as well keep it there, I'd say. So if you're in agreement with this, they're not gonna keep this rate locked in forever. And August 3rd is our next meeting, since I asked you to cancel the next meeting. Now we need a special one next week. Tuesday would be the best, or it could be Wednesday, or it could be Thursday. Could be a 5-10 minute meeting. I'll have all the final paperwork here just to approve refinancing that.
I'm fine with Tuesday.
That's fine.
Tuesday's fine.
Are there any other things we may need that meeting for?
We get it scheduled, I'll guarantee things will come up.
Maybe we should hold off scheduling it.
Oh, no, I think we can. If Tuesday works for everybody, this will
Somebody
be
out of town, but no big deal. You only need 5 to, or whatever.
I guess I'm saying if there are other items that we want to take action on before August 3rd, does Tuesday still make sense for that?
You're back, and do you want more time the following week, or no, or,
Yeah, maybe, I mean,
you know, put more things on something?
right.
Well, it has to be within the next week for them to have this rate locked in. It's set Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, so a week and a half, I would can't put it much farther than that.
Okay,
Sounds like
if
we're having a
that's,
meeting.
So we're gonna have to have the meeting. If we have to have an additional meeting last week in July, we'll have to have one then too.
okay, yeah. Tuesday works for me.
Okay. 6 o'clock.
Okay.
So you don't need any action tonight then, or do you?
No. If you wanted to have an action tonight, we do have a choice of going with the mineral point bag farmers or be it low somewhere else. You know, you could, it's the same way, you could have that choice if you wanted to.
We're gonna stay with Mineral Point, and I don't believe we need any action. We'll just approve the paperwork next week.
Okay, we'll move on then to item 17, discussion and action regarding purchase of ionization air purifiers.
So guys, can you hear me on the computer?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so this is Lee. I spent a good part of the summer basically figuring out the best way to sanitize and disinfect the school and prepare us for kids coming back. The one thing I haven't really, I guess I need to present to you guys is we may need to start looking at our ductwork, our HVAC, as far as what we can do to maximize, the efficiency as far as cleaning the air ducts and, preventing coronavirus spread. Because of the CDC's, persistence with how this is airborne, an ASHRAE, which ASHRAE is the governing body for HVAC. They're very concerned with the airborneness of this virus. So an option, I spoke with Riley's Plumbing and Heating and said, what could we do to take care of this in our ductwork? And because at some point, guys, this is going to come down either from the CDC or the ASHRAE and say, hey, you got to do something. So what I found and what I propose is the best solution is a GPS ionization unit, which basically, long story short, is electrically charged particles, a device in the HVAC unit that basically will kill and eliminate several different viruses, including COVID, tuberculosis, E. coli, MRSA, and it's a fungicide as well. Basically, what it does is it sends the particles around the virus, whatever the virus is, clumps it up so that our normal air filters can pick them up and be evacuated out of the air handler. So what we're looking at basically is, I had quotes, and you guys can see on board book. We have quotes for both buildings, the DEMS building and the high school, to put these into our existing HVAC units. This proposal is from Riley's, a local contractor. This is something that if you guys feel you want to proceed with and purchase, could be installed before school started. The good part is with the Needle Point ionization system, it's ozone free. There's no concerns with ozone in the building or elevated CO levels because we're not changing the fresh air intake. The big thing from the ASHRAE and the CDC is they want to circulate as much fresh air in the building as possible, which we can, and I can from the controls I have for the HVAC. But with this ionization system installed, within 30 minutes of it running, we could have up to 99% of COVID, SARS, particles eliminated. So I guess what I want you guys to be aware of and kind of educate tonight is this is probably our best option. At some point, we're going to get told to do this. If COVID sticks around, we're going to get told we have to do this. That could be a week, a month, a year. You guys know that. But what I want to do is kind of be proactive and present a proposal to you guys from a local contractor on what it would cost to install this into our HVAC units in both buildings.
I think we need to do a little more research on it before we jump into it full swing. If you do a little digging into the data on this, you can find some different stuff on it. It's down probably lower than 80% on the kill on the viruses. I don't think COVID's listed on any of them. I just think we need to do more research, and especially if we're looking at putting AC in the DEMS building, I don't think we're looking at wasting $45,000 before we do that. So that's just my take on it.
That's kind of the point, Joe, I was going to bring up as well, is we have to make a decision as far as that is concerned with the DEMS building. I'm not saying that we need to purchase this tonight.
Right.
I just want you guys aware that this is the option we need to pursue. There is a test sample done, Joe, that was provided by GPS on that.
Right, I see that too, but I mean, if you dig further, you know, I mean, everybody's going to pad their data too to try to make it look better. I mean, if you look at other studies too, I mean, it's down around 80%, and it's different viruses it does kill. I don't think anybody's proven it's done anything for COVID.
80% sounds pretty good to me. And yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of testing done with COVID. The only one that I found too was what the manufacturer sent, and obviously you got to be skeptical about that.
I mean, there are other options. I looked into the UV lights, but UV light is more maintenance costs. You know, there's annual replacement costs on that. I think that would nickel and dime us more. I did ask around, you know, I spoke with the hospital maintenance director. The hospital does not have anything special in their HVAC right now, but they are looking. I know the OR has something, but the rest of the ductwork does not. Mineral Point Schools, I spoke to them today. They're starting to look into this. But
I'm not saying we shouldn't look at it. I'm not saying that it's something that possibly won't work, but I think instead of spending, you know, 45,000, we walk before we run. We try it, see if, you know, on small scale and see if it works, or find more data out there to prove that that's the way to go. I'm not saying it's not the way to go, but I mean, we got to be sensible with what we're doing. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that it's not something that would work, but we just need to do more research on it.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. I agree, but unfortunately with COVID, you know, there's only so much research, and I understand it. I just, like I said, what I more or less want to do tonight is present you guys with an option. I mean, if we get to a situation, we have a case or somebody, or, you know, a potential outbreak in the school, this is something we may have to be very serious about purchasing.
Well, no, Lee, I think it's appropriate that you bring this to us and give us an idea of what the costs are. I agree with Joe, though, that I think that there, you know, a little more research and stuff. And it is good to be proactive to something rather than being dictated to. But I get a little, you know, knowing that 45 grand at Dems would be a throwaway. I just want to make sure that it's actual, you know, what we need and just a little bit more on it. I'm in favor of it. If in fact it does address COVID, it would be an ideal solution.
Well, you have to think about it a little bit differently though, too. It's not a throwaway. We're not going to have a new HVAC system this year. And
True,
we're going to have staff and we're going to have students in this building. So you have to think about it from that standpoint. Another thing you have to think about is COVID is brand new. It's new this year. There's not going to be a lot of data and a lot of research.
If you also have a case of COVID at the school, you're not going to be at the school anyway.
You may not be at the school anyway, is what he said.
Yeah, but Joe, would be another way for us to eliminate it from the airborne. I just, like I said, you're right. There isn't a lot of COVID studies, but I present you the data that I can find at this point. You know, and obviously it's a manufacturer data, but you know, Riley's talking with them. They've done a lot of seminars and webinars on this system. You know, we're the first school that they've talked to that's looking at it. But he said he agrees too. At some point, this is coming. You know, we're going to have to do something, especially if COVID's here to stay. But just wanted to make you guys aware so that when the time does come, it isn't a surprise to everyone.
Well, it's not like we have a whole lot of time to wait. I mean, there's not going to be any more research on this before September 1st. You know, we can't wait for research or like studies to be done. We're going to likely ask students and staff to come back in these buildings on September 1st. And even if this system would deactivate 80% of the virus in the air, and that's not surfaces, it's not some magical thing, but if it deactivates 80%, it's worth spending that money. I mean, I know we're talking about replacing the air handlers and DEMS, but that's at least 2 years away, maybe 3 years away. So you split that cost up. The benefit is not just for COVID, it's, you know, flu, it's, you know, fungicide, it's all those things. So I think we've spent money in worse ways than this. I mean,
we've had different times too.
We can wait and still get the benefit from this year is what I'm saying.
I guess my input, and I think maybe this could be addressed, this discussion can be lumped in with when we get down to masks. I think you probably can save the 45 grand and you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck if kids and faculty have masks on.
Would it be of any benefit to put individual air purifiers in each classroom?
I don't necessarily know that any data is going to help you with that, and I'm honestly a little leery of anytime you mention the word ionization. There's people peddling ionization of water to spray down stuff to help with COVID. So I honestly think you're going to get more bang for your buck if you require masks than spending $45,000 right now on something that we're throwing darts at, and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. We know for a fact that masks are going to help reduce virus transmission. We know that. It's data and science. It's out there. So
and it's not 45, it's 75 because it'd be 30 for DHS.
So 75,000 until there's something that comes down the road that we know for sure that it's going to work. I have no problem spending the 75 grand if we know that it's going to work. We don't have it in the hospital right now. They may be looking, but we've had a heck of a lot more COVID in the building and in the hospital than that school's had. And as far as I know, we haven't had any local transmission of the virus within the building. So we all wear masks.
Would there be any thought of only purchasing the unit at this time for the high school, since there seems to be a sticking point about replacing the DIMS air handler?
Well, I think I'm hearing a little sticky point too about the the actual effectiveness of it.
Well, I can continue to gather data and find as much as I can. You know, I'll speak with more mechanical contractors. I'll get what I can, guys, and present it to you and keep you updated. But like I said, I just have a feeling at some point they're gonna ask us, what are we doing for our air filtration?
Sure. No, that's reasonable.
What?
I'm sure you've asked the question, if we could, say we did something in 2 or 3 years, if we could use that with a new system, and that's, you wouldn't know if it would work.
Yeah, so here's the deal. The units, the ion units are sized for the HVAC unit, you know, that it's put into. So Cale's right. If we were to pursue this, we would probably want to target the high school at this point, because the unit would be put into the DEMS air handling unit. And then if that was ever replaced, the ion unit would have to be replaced as well. So you're right. You may not get your bang for the buck at the DEMS building right away. The high school units are here, you know, for the foreseeable future at this point. But the ion units are sized for the CFM of the air handling unit.
How often, Lee, are the air handlers recircling air in the rooms?
Well, it depends on the size of the unit, but we were looking between 5 to 6 air exchanges an hour.
No, what do we have right now, though?
At the high school?
Yeah.
The high school is 5 to 6 air exchanges per hour. That's what they were commissioned to.
Okay. So that's basically what we operate in our operating room in the hospitals once every 20 minutes.
See, the other thing with ionizers is they don't get rid of the pollutants. All they do is cause it to stick to a surface.
Yeah, that's what.
But Joe, then the point is you're ionizing it as it comes back through the return duct, and then it gets sucked into the filters. Your HVAC filters are catching it. That's how it works.
So we have enough airflow in our buildings for that?
Yeah, all of our air handlers have been commissioned to what their square footages are. That's something I have Control Solutions check every couple of years to make sure in this building that it's done.
Did Riley say, Lee, from the time of ordering to the time to put in, how long it would take?
He told me if it was approved, it would be able to be installed before school started.
And if we waited till school started, could they still be installed?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 4 to 5 weeks from time to say order it to install it. But I mean, that also is dependent on demand too. You know, if a lot of schools start doing it.
my recommendation, if Lee can come up, I don't know how much more information you can come up in the next couple of weeks, and he can talk to some other school district, other people, and bring us back to the 1st of August and see where we're at there.
Well, I can promise you guys, I'll get as much information as I can, but like Colleen and other people said, COVID's new. So there's only so much data with COVID.
The technology is legitimate. I mean, you can Google it, and I mean, obviously you gotta sift through the junk that you find on Google too, but I mean, it is legitimate technology. We don't know for sure how effective it is on COVID. And I agree with Nick, you know, about masks, but also even if we require masks at whatever level, we know that they're not going to be perfectly used. You know, so doing this on top of masks provides a little extra protection. Is that worth it? I mean, I don't know. And even if we install them, we won't know because we're not going to, you know, we can't measure what's coming out of the air either. So it's, you know, it is a stab in the dark in some ways, but.
So at this point, everybody, just so you're aware of what the plan is, what my plan is for HVAC, just right now with the equipment we have, is we are going to open up, or I'm going to open up more of the outside air dampeners to bring in more fresh air, which is what the CDC wants to do. You know, open windows on a nice day. The CDC would like to keep the humidity levels in the rooms, you know, between a specific number, which is much easier in an air-conditioned room than a non. But that's not the end of the world either. What we'll do is we'll try to bring in more fresh air, circulate, Nick, like you said, your air exchanges. The issue will be in the wintertime. I can't fly open an outside air dampener when it's 20 degrees out, I'll freeze coils. And then the heating system becomes less efficient, you know, so there's, you know, I'm learning too, like, you know, we're doing my research, we're trying to figure out the best way to do it. I just want to present you guys with this ionization plan as a, you know, as an opportunity that, hey, you know, maybe this is something we want to look at to be proactive with the virus.
What's the upkeep, filters and things like that if you go with something like this?
We do filters quarterly, you know, every 3 months. Won't change.
Are our filters N95?
Our air filters? No, they're not.
Okay.
No. Recommendation that I read from ASHRAE is there from MERV 8s and MERV 13s.
Okay.
Which is what we use, but we don't do the HEPA filters. We don't have negative pressure rooms like the hospital does.
Yep.
But filter replacement doesn't change. We're still doing it quarterly. And the nice part about the ionization unit, the bipolar, is it's maintenance free. There isn't anything we have to do. I don't have to replace the part. I have to keep an eye on the brushes, but they say that's over several years. You know, they may need to be replaced down the road, but it really is maintenance free, from what I understand. So that's something else that I kind of, you know, turned me towards it, is it's not going to cost us with maintenance charges like a UV light would, replacing bulbs every year, you know, and then the effectiveness of those.
Right.
My only comment would to be, my only argument, and I'm just playing devil's advocate on the UV, we know that works. Whereas the ionization, we don't know that works. So, I mean, I guess I would be more reluctant to spend money on something currently if we wanted to spend money on something we know that works.
Yeah, but with UV comes extreme expense too. Like one unit costing $40,000 that does one classroom in 8 minutes.
And how many minutes?
What do you say?
How many minutes? 8?
How many minutes?
8 minutes.
Right. So you would just rotate that unit through, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's.
I mean, I guess if I'm going to spend $80,000, I would rather spend it on 2 units and rotate them every 8 minutes. And I know that it's going to work versus something we're throwing a dart at and hoping that it's going to work. Right.
Isn't the preferred the negative pressure, Zub?
Negative pressure is obviously the preferred, but that's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to happen here,
No.
But you have to remember too, that UV light is gonna have to be moved probably in most classrooms 3 or 4 times because the hospital room is much smaller than a classroom.
Correct.
So.
Well, and something else I want everybody to remember, the hospital is a sterile environment and we do our very best to clean up the school, but we are not a sterile environment. So that's another issue we run into. And that's why I'm looking at the ion units, which would hook into the ductwork and cover a large area as opposed to moving a unit. I know what you're talking about, Zoom. I did a little research with that. And you're right. I've seen how that works in small areas, but I couldn't I couldn't justify buying those for the school and the amount of rooms we have in both buildings at this point.
I guess this is where I'm at. I mean, I don't think we're prepared to take a vote on this tonight, but I am prepared to vote on it in a couple weeks with more information. I think that's the kind of what I'm seeing. There's some interest and maybe some ain't so interested, but I think we should at least get some more information and possibly take a vote at the end of the month for those who maybe want to go forward or not.
Can I'd just like to ask the board an honest question. What is your biggest concern so I can try to find answers for that to either, you know, soothe your concern or say, hey, maybe you are right. This is something to be concerned about.
We're getting the positives out of it. You follow what I'm saying? It's not like we're just getting one, and I know some of them are unknowns. The COVID may not be labeled, but there's some other things that some value that come out of your $40,000.
Yeah, I mean, this is something after I did more research, I was interested in maybe even just adding it into the weight room unit because of the issues we have with wrestling with weights with, you know, funguses and impetigo and stuff like that. Things that could help prevent some of those things, you know, skin diseases. I know you can't prevent the touch, I understand that, but anything we could kill airborne. So it's just something I thought about for at least the wrestling unit.
So if we want to say we'll take it up next time, what additional information are we expecting Lee to get for us?
That's what I'm.
Like the one thing that I researched that really piqued my interest when I was looking at it was the data sheet. And the white page right in there talks about it killing rhinovirus and, you know, influenza and all this stuff. Like, I get that COVID's here and we have to deal with it for a while, but we're talking about a lot of other stuff that we have kids missing school. We have adults missing school because of the flu and other viruses that we're not even sure what they are. So I think everybody needs to look at the big picture of we're not just investing in trying to prevent coronavirus. There's a lot of other airborne things that can be looked at. So I would just say, go to the website and read the data that's out there, because there's a lot of stuff up there and it's really good information.
Well, then I guess I would be encouraged to see what other schools that they put it in. If it's meant to tackle those other things, obvious before COVID appeared, then this technology should already be implemented in other schools.
Yeah, on their website,
Hospitals and every other thing.
There's a huge map. I'm sure Lee could get a list of references from them.
And that, I mean, I would be encouraged to follow up on that. To see what, have they noticed prior to COVID, have they noticed a decrease in influenza cases? Have they noticed an increase in, you know, just kids missing in school in general since it's been in place?
I just get a little skeptical when something's presented as a panacea, you know, and it's, you know, for everything and so if it has, and possibly I'm sure there's been some other installs, and I agree with that, you know, even if maybe it's not as effective on COVID, but it can knock down influenza, I'd be all for that.
Me too. And that's what I said. Obviously, it's been, I mean, it should be in schools right now. And I think I would encourage us to follow up with that. Hey, have you guys noticed a difference? And if so, then great.
On the product data sheet, it's endorsed by the U.S. Environment Protection Agency, the American Federation of Teachers, Association of School Business Officials, American Lung Association, the National Parent Teachers Association, and the National Education Association. So I'm sure Lee can get us some references.
Right, but how about the National Hospital Association? I don't see that in there. That would be a pretty important one.
Well, the Hospital Association is going to work with a lot different of equipment because, like Lee said, they're dealing with a sterile field.
No, they're not. Our hallways aren't sterile. I'm not sure where you guys are getting the sterile fields from. They're not sterile.
Yeah, common areas in hospital aren't.
No, the OR would be your only sterile area. So that's not true. So I'm not against it, guys. I really not. I just don't want to spend $45,000 throwing darts at something that we really don't know if it's going to work.
And if we approve the purchase of these, where does that fit into our budget? Where would we draw that money from? Do we have something set aside for things like this?
I did put it in the preliminary budget. It's under about 200,000 umbrella of COVID support for increased custodial cleaning, ion unit, extra chemicals and wipes and things that are necessary. So there is about 200,000 in that preliminary budget for coronavirus related things.
Okay.
Speaking of that, Lee, where are we at with supplies, cleaning and that? Are you comfortable with where we're at and going forward?
I'm comfortable at this moment, but whatever, when you guys discuss the school board or the school opening, I will, I'll let you know my thoughts after that. At this point, I feel we're good and we can handle what's coming.
And supply chain seems okay?
I have some inside sources that I won't reveal.
Right.
Yes, good, RJ.
Okay.
Well, just, I guess, leave to see what you can come up with and maybe towards the end of this month, the first meeting in August. Bring it back up.
Is everybody okay with that? This will be on the agenda for a future meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Item 18, discussion and action regarding Fund 46 fund balance transfer.
At the last meeting in June, I told you that I was anticipating a need to take out some from fund balance and put in Fund 46 in order to maintain a stable tax rate. And since then, things have changed a little bit. We're always getting new information. July 1st, we got an aid estimate from the state. And based on our spending last year, our estimate on the amount of aid we're going to get next year was higher than I thought it was going to be. Change things up a little bit. So what I would ask now, rather than approval of taking 200,000 out of fund balance and transferring to Fund 46, would be if you could give me the authority to transfer up to 200,000, whichever way made the most sense to work things out to have a stable tax rate. We may need to take a little bit out and put in Fund 46, or we may actually need to put some back into fund balance, depending how the audit goes and depending how the numbers are looking the next couple of weeks. As far as putting money in fund balance, I know there've been discussions that we already have a healthy fund balance, and so why would we add to that? This isn't the worst time to add to it. With the next 2 years are a big unknown and question mark. It's looking more every day like the budget for this current year is going to be okay. The state may not do a budget repair bill and reduce dramatically our revenue this year. But the following 2 years, when they do their next biennial budget, it's a lot of uncertainty. So if that's what happens, is we put a little bit more into fund balance this year, I don't think that would be the worst thing either.
I'll make a motion to approve up to authorizing the superintendent to make the transfers up to 200,000.
I'll second.
Motion by Bronco, second by Zuberbuehler to give Kale the authority as discussed. Is there any discussion?
Do you believe, depending on how the audit goes, Kale, would there be more that you could transfer in and out?
There would not be, I would not transfer more than what you just approved. What could definitely happen is a large amount going into Fund 46. But I'm talking about the ability to either to go in and out of fund balance.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 19, discussion and action regarding foreign exchange students for the 2021 school year.
Believe it or not, we've had a couple of requests to have foreign exchange students come to the high school this year. Mr. Lancaster shared with the people asking that we need to bring it to you, but we're not gonna recommend it. I guess, obviously, it'll be your decision. Mr. Lancaster's on there. I think I can speak for him that we're not thinking it's a real good idea to bring kids from other countries in right now.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I just have some concerns, just with backgrounds and things like that we may not know. But yeah, we've been asked whether or not the district would allow foreign exchange students this year, which kind of surprised me.
Me too. I'm not sure as a parent I'd want my kid coming to the United States.
I'll make a motion to deny foreign exchange students for the 2021 school year.
Second.
Motion by Reichling, second by Hermanson to not have any foreign exchange students 2021 school year. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Item 20, discussion and action regarding 2021 school opening plans and schedule.
Yeah, my plan for this tonight, and Lori and Aaron too, we've been meeting a lot talking about this. Our idea was that this agenda item would be specifically related to the number of days that the kids come, whether or not it's in person, and that's about it. Then the next agenda item after that would be all the details associated with it. The hope would be, and it's set up this way on the agenda, that there would be discussion and action about the schedule and the plan for the schedule. And we would announce to the community after tonight what that plan is. September 1st, here's what we're gonna do for this number of days, etc. And then on the next agenda item, we would have discussion only of what that looks like, the smaller details, maps, and that kind of thing, without any kind of action, so that the community and the staff would have 3 weeks to let this soak in, provide their input, and then on August 3rd, we would have this item back on for final decisions of the detail.
Kale, could you talk a little bit about the meeting you participated in last week with other administrators?
Sure. Aaron and Lori and I all participated in about a 4-hour meeting last week with all the administrators from this part of the state and the county health official from each county. You guys can speak up. The feeling I got was that the majority of schools are considering going back 5 days a week with the normal schedule. There were a couple, especially at the older, maybe high school level, that seemed like they were considering some hybrid approaches with a mix of in-person and virtual. We got some information from them regarding music, that the choir, especially which we already talked about here tonight, was increase the risk of transmission. We got some information from the attorney on there. There was an attorney from our insurance company, actually EMC, so that she shared that schools do enjoy an immunity from prosecution if someone, virus-related claims liability-wise. But what you don't want to do is establish rules and then not follow them. If you do that, you're opening yourself up to liability that you don't have to start with. So the way you would create liability is not following state orders or state mandates or county orders or county mandates. And there are none of those right now applicable to us. They're all recommendations. So what we want to be careful of through this whole process is creating rules for ourselves and then not following them. If we were to do that, that would open us up to some liability. Aaron, Lori?
I think that was a pretty good summary. It was a very interesting and informative meeting. I would agree. It seemed as if most districts in the CISA are looking at coming back 5 days a week and also offering a virtual piece as well. If families choose not to send their students to school, they would be able to Zoom into the class live while it was occurring as well. That seemed like the majority. I've talked to a couple of my colleagues in the area as well, one of which is going back 5 days a week, and another one that's actually doing a 4-day face-to-face, 1-day virtual. So there's a lot of options out there that people are looking at, but it seems like right now the vast majority are going to 5 days a week.
I'm hearing the same too. I think the only school that I've heard, and I can't 100% confirm it, that's going to a hybrid system is Mount Horeb. My understanding is they're just going like a Monday, Tuesday kind of thing, depending on your last name in the alphabet. Other than that, I'm hearing most of the schools are going back five days a week.
I guess if you look at our student survey and what their parent survey
And
staff, I mean, it's like 80-some% wanting to get back. I feel we should go back 5 days a week. I wouldn't make that decision unless I knew our cleaning department and Lee could handle that situation. I had a conversation with Lee the other day. Lee feels if we go 5 days a week, whether it be from some extra help or maybe not, he can handle that. So put it real simple, I'd make a motion to go back 5 days a week. And part of that being just what our students and teachers and staff think, and he believes he can keep the place safe and clean at the best of his abilities.
And when we talk 5 days a week, it's the normal schedule, which would be a half day on Friday, correct?
That is correct, keeping things the same.
So one of the problems with a full schedule is, the social distancing. We have, the group, everybody's here. Granted, some people will not send their kids and do it virtually. Are we confident with that number of kids in our buildings, I guess, Aaron and Lori, that we can still have some sort of social distancing, understanding that there obviously are limitations, but
what we talked about in this building was doing cohorts and having the students stay within the same classroom so they were exposed to one group of kiddos. Most of our class sections have 18 to 22 kids, so how many are going to be in a classroom? A lot of the schools that presented that day talked about having specials rotate classrooms to alleviate kids in the hallways. I think we need to look at something different. If we're going to do that, we need to look at maybe kids having their backpacks with them in the classroom to alleviate gathering at the lockers. There's a lot of things to think about.
yeah, I would agree with not using lockers simply for lease staff and cleaning purposes.
Well, and those lockers are very close for, or the hooks for the little kids. But are we going to be able to have 6 feet apart in classrooms with 20-some kids?
If the idea was to keep all kids 6 feet apart at all times, there would be no school able to go back. According to the CDC list here, it says encourage social distancing through increased spacing and some other limiting of mixture of groups if feasible.
And they even talked on some of those, like instead of having the kids face each other in the classroom, everything facing one direction, so they're not coughing on each other.
That's how we have our summer school room set up right now. Everybody's facing one direction.
Yep.
We have them spaced apart.
Yeah, but I agreed, and that's what I've heard too, is that, the 6 feet, which is the preferred, but now they're even talking some activities, maybe if it isn't an aerosol, right? That may not even be enough. So you're correct, Cal. We wouldn't be able to open if we had to adhere to that strictness. But I think if we can manage it too in some of the common areas where they would congregate,
I just think you take those common areas out of the equation, RJ.
Okay.
I really do. I think, I mean, I know we're getting further down on that discussion, but I think we need to talk about Darlington is going to be the biggest school district in the county. You know, a lot of the other schools are able to have smaller class sizes, and they're going to be able to better social distance. So we're unique in the sense where our class sizes are much bigger than, you know, the surrounding communities. So I think we really need to take a hard look at, I've gone back and forth, and I know we're kind of jumping further down the line here on the agenda, but masking of staff and students just due to our size. And truly, if we want the kids in the school, I think that that's going to be our only feasible way to get that go ahead.
We gotta wait to talk about that on
Well-
the agenda.
So, I mean, for purposes of our discussion, 20 and 21, I'm okay with mashing it all together, knowing that the only thing we want to take action on is if we're opening and 5 days a week or whatever, and in person or not.
Yeah.
Did Red make a motion on that?
Yes, we have a motion.
Yeah, we have a motion by Red.
I'll second it.
This motion by Chris, second by Hermanson to open on September 1st, 5 days a week in person. Further discussion?
I would just say, based on what I said earlier, that it's impossible to do the 6 feet. That doesn't mean that we're just gonna throw our hands up and not try. Because currently, the way rooms are set up, there may be a big gap around the outside, and all the desks may for years have been situated right in the middle. We're not gonna have that anymore. The desks are they all spread out as much as possible around the room. Even if we're not able to get 6 feet, we're gonna maximize our space as much as we can.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I went into one of our typical classrooms today, measured, you know, to keep that 6-foot distance. I still think we could, with everything kind of cleared out, any bookshelves, things like that. I still think we can get 15, 16 desks and be very close to that 6-foot distance, which is more than what I thought it probably would be. So I think in a lot of our classrooms for certain sections, we're going to be able to do that, but we definitely can't do that for every section we're going to have of classes.
8 square feet.
So if we do come back 5 days a week, what happens? And, you know, these aren't things on here for decision tonight, but what are potential things we do once we get positive tests, like in a classroom or a teacher? What does that mean for how school functions?
It's all work in progress. You're not gonna have, I mean, that's something we all definitely need to discuss when we get to that point.
Well, I think
You're kind of grouping together.
I think health,
Sure.
I think health departments have said what we should do, right?
Cal, at the meeting, I know that when we had talked earlier and at the negotiations meeting was that your hope, and which I'm assuming now will be the August 3rd meeting, is to say, here's that 3-stage plan that goes from we're open and operating as normal to if this occurs, this happens. If this number is tested positive, this happens, to the point of where we would go all virtual again. Is that correct?
Correct. At the negotiations committee, that was my plan. Since that 4-hour meeting with all the health directors, the numbers in my mind that would lead to the escalated stages have dramatically dropped.
More people have taken it.
And now they're saying if one kid tests positive, every kid in that class and the teacher need to be quarantined for 14 days. And the stages that I was thinking of, what happens if you have 1, 2, 5, 10? They're saying if you get up to 4, that's a massive breakout emergency where you need to shut the whole works down. So the numbers that I was thinking of were higher. I think the reality is going to be any kind of breakout is going to cause a closure of at least 2 weeks.
I get that, but my question is, what if we keep them in wings and things like that? Is it a breakout per wing? if we have something happen in the grade school, does that and there's nothing in the high school, does that automatically mean all the high schoolers are shut down for 2 weeks? I mean, is that kind of up to us and the health departments, you know, as a work in progress to come up with a plan? You know what I'm saying? If the breakout is just in wing 1 or classroom 1, which we know could happen, there was 20 people in there and maybe it didn't get caught or whatever. Do we automatically shut down the high school, which has no issues possibly? So there's the things I think we need to discuss, and whatever we come up with, it's ever so changing. Just like this, we may say we're going back to school this fall, but whether it be the governor or the health department may change our mind with the times. But I think the public and the parents and the teachers want to know whether or not our true plan is getting back to school. So we need to move on that. I know it's on the, it's there for action. So we can go into that and then we can talk for 5 hours tonight on all the little things we can do. But I want people and the public that are watching tonight to know that these are ever so changing. I mean, somebody may come up with a better idea or a better plan in 3 weeks than what we may have tonight. Things are going to change. They're always going to be fluid, but we're going to do our best possible ability to make the best decisions as we go. Because things are different from what they were 3 weeks ago. So
I feel like we got the best information we've gotten so far from that meeting that we went to last week.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, Red, but some of this does affect how I might vote on this motion. That's
okay.
That's why I bring it up. And is it the case that if the health departments are recommending if one student in a classroom is tested positive, the whole class goes home?
Yeah, that's true. And that was my point. I think it's going to be easier for us in Lori's building to keep track of it than versus the high school, because the high school is intermingling through the whole school. I think we can eliminate that in the grade school. If we keep them locked to their wings into their rooms, if we do have a cluster or what they consider a breakout cluster of 4, we possibly can just shut down that wing, isolate that wing for 2 weeks. If we know those individuals haven't gone into the other parts of the building. And that's why I think it's very important if we're able to do that we can do that. Now for Aaron's building, it's going to be almost impossible because you've got kids rotating through the hallways. You've got kids going in different classrooms. I think that's going to be a much more difficult task to handle. But I think in Lori's building, I think it's at least a possibility or something for us to seriously look at if we can keep those kids in one room. I know it's not going to be, obviously the kids aren't going to really appreciate that, but keeping them out of common areas if we truly want to keep the buildings open.
So those numbers of 1 to 4 and that they provided you some documentation and just anyway, where they stood and say, this is what you have to do.
Yeah.
This is the requirement from our public health.
Right. On a public health standpoint, and I'm almost positive on that, it's considered a breakout. A breakout is considered a cluster of 4, like
4, correct. And
so the National Guard then at that point currently is called in to come in and do testing.
Which we had with a local business.
Right. Correct.
And that, so if that's it, so if they have it, but the one person tests positive in that wing or classroom is quarantined, did they provide us with at the meeting, any documentation or anything where they stood behind that or said, these are the guidelines you have to follow or the requirements?
There are no requirements, it's all recommendations, but if anybody tests positive, they're recommending anybody that's had close contact with that person in the last 2 weeks, and close contact is defined as 15 minutes of time spent within 6 feet of them.
And will our public health department do contact tracing then?
No, I don't think they would come to the school and do that, but we would have to figure that out ourselves.
Well, that's not true, Cale. I think if we have an individual that tests positive for COVID, they may not call and give you the individual's name, but they will call and say, hey, you do have an individual that has tested positive, and go from there. I think that that's something that we need to discuss with our public health official, as if we do have a student, how we go about doing that. I think that that's a reasonable question to ask.
Hey, Nick, it's Colleen.
Yeah.
So if you have a positive case, and public health is gonna know that they've been to school through their screening process, right?
They should, yeah, they should, because they contract trace everybody that tests positive.
So then is it their responsibility to, like, how do they get their hands on like a classroom list, or do they have to call everybody at NEMS, or how does that work?
That's a good question for our public health. I'm not sure how that would work if we do have that scenario where we do have a student that tests positive. My guess is they would probably ask our administration for a class list and then go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just chime in, because there was a point made at the high school, or about high schools at that meeting last week, that they said potentially with one positive case in a high school, because of the intermingling of classes and hallways and things like that, that could shut down the entire building for that 14 to 21 days is kind of what they were saying.
Yeah.
So, definitely if you can keep kids in cohorts as much as possible, like you can at the DEMS building, that's definitely a smart move. But I just want you all to be aware that the high school, that's going to be pretty much next to impossible if we're going to offer the classes that we normally offer.
Correct.
Nick, how as a medical person, having teachers go from classroom to classroom, like our allied arts teachers, all the grade levels?
Yep.
What impact would that have?
It's a good point, especially if we're trying to keep them isolated, because they could consider to be a vector if they're transferring from classroom to classroom to classroom, and we're trying to. So some of those, yeah.
Kale said that close contact is considered less than 6 feet for 15 minutes at a time.
That's true. Correct.
Would that be something where those people coming in and out just have to make sure they're not within 6 feet? Would that work or not?
Yes, that works, and that's considered a low risk of exposure. If they were to be positive and they were to come into a classroom, and they're 6 feet away from everybody, right? And theoretically, we're probably going to have them, and we'll get into that discussion, have them masked when they come into the classrooms, which has proven to help. So I think that, we can discuss that later as well, but I think that the less people you have moving, the better, in a sense, where we bring one person from room to room versus having multiple people from room to room. I think that that's going to be better.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor here yet. Is there any further discussion on that motion, which is to open on September 1st, 5 days a week in person? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. So now we're on 21, which is discussion regarding all those details. And again, I think the intention here is for us to kind of hash this out and define what are the big questions, and then give staff and community members and our administration time to kind of figure out answers to those questions, and then approve what we need to approve in August or at a future board meeting. And some of this stuff doesn't need board action. It's going to follow the administration, but I think we need to be careful and deliberate in how we do these things.
Well, I guess I've had a lot of people mention plexiglass around their desks. I think, Kale, you ordered shields for teachers, and there's several things for plexiglass around desks, things like that. Much what we were talking about, if we do have somebody from art come in, can they keep their 6 feet, stay behind a shield or something like that? Those are some of the things that people have addressed to me. Are they going to be feasible, suitable? Are we okay with that? Those type of things. I guess I am, as long as they're socially distancing the best they can and things like that.
I mean, I guess I'll start it because I mean, and I'm just going to give you my opinion on the mask situation. And I've kind of gone back and forth. I've done a lot of research. I've talked to a lot of people, got a lot of opinions. Actually, today I got a few opinions just knowing that this was going to come down. Initially, I was like, masks, should we do it? Should we not do it? I thought, at first I initially thought that the high school definitely should wear them just, when they're in the class, when they're transferring in the hallways, when they're in high traffic areas. And I've now come to a complete 180 on that. And my concern is, and new data has come out now, suggesting masks. And I think if we want to do this the right way and we want the schools to stay open as long as we can, the data right now is saying masks mandatory. Everybody, staff, students, anybody that's in a building has a mask on. The only time you take the mask off is obviously to eat. Masks outside, as long as you're 6 feet away from somebody, you don't need them. It's kind of overkill. The new data out now says that prior they used to just say that, hey, if I'm wearing a mask, I'm wearing that to protect you from me. There's been new data out now that says just by wearing a mask, you're reducing your risk of acquiring the virus by 65%, just a normal cloth mask. So that alone, I mean, that's a no-brainer. If we can reduce the risk of transmission of a virus by 65% by just wearing a mask, I think that's the prudent thing to do. I mean, ultimately, we want the school to stay open. We mandate, kids to wear snow boots when it's snowing out, that they can't go off the pavement, that they put boots on. We know that we've got an active virus in the community. And I think the only way that we're going to be able to somewhat give a simile of what we've had in the past is it's going to be masks. Now, the first questions everybody's going to ask is, how are we going to make the little kids wear masks? My argument is wearing masks is a learned behavior. Okay. So initially, are you going to be able to put a mask on and wear it for 8 hours? Probably not. So I think that sooner we make that decision to mask mandatory, we can get stuff out to the parents and say, hey, work with Johnny at home, make him wear a mask for an hour for a day, extend it, make him wear 2 hours, make him wear 3 hours. We know masks work. There's a reason why I wear a mask in the operating room. They work. And you're never going to see a surgery where we don't have masks on. So we know we have a highly transmissible virus. Preventing masks work, or wearing masks work. It's not political. That's science, that's data. And I think that we need to really consider it if this is what we truly want to do. So that's my spiel.
If it's as easy as learned behavior, we wouldn't have any behavioral problems. We'd tell all the kids to behave all the time. I don't care how much you think you're going to get them to do what you tell them. There's going to be kids that aren't going to wear a mask properly, which is a complete waste of our time then.
No, it's not a complete waste of the time, Joe.
If they're not going to wear it properly, it's a complete waste of their time.
My question for you, Nick, would be, Kale brought up that the school attorney said we open ourselves to litigation if we put a rule in place and it's not followed. So let's say we have one student that won't wear a mask, no matter who tells that student what to do. At that point, does that student get sent home and they're not allowed back in the building until they wear one? Or
I don't know I don't know the legality on that, Colleen. I can't comment on that. Maybe Kale can get information on that. I don't know if you legally can say that you can't provide an education because you choose not to wear a mask. I mean, there's things that you can't bring a gun into school.
Right, what he's saying is that that's what opens us to legalities. If we have a rule and it's not followed.
Well,
so if we have a student that comes to school and will not wear a mask, and then we have a staff member that sues the school because he or she has a student that won't wear a mask and we can't physically enforce it. Now we're talking about a whole group of policies that we have to come up with related to that to keep ourselves from litigation. So that's my only question to you. Like, I get what you're saying. I wear a mask. I do it for others more than myself, but I'm just questioning how we can put ourselves in that legal bind.
Well, just along those same lines, and Zub, I agree with everything you said 100%. You know, I wear a mask. I have to. And if everybody wore a mask, there would be less transmission. I agree with everything. But despite people that are at risk, people that the transmissions and that, until there is some type of legal mandate, I'm very uncomfortable with requiring individuals to do something. Maybe it's my old libertarian background of personal rights and freedoms. But I'm, unless it's something like what Dane County just imposed, I don't see how we can do that and enforce that without, to Colleen's point, putting us up at some risk.
Well, I can
Well,
tell you.
it's just expanding on what Colleen and RJ is saying. I agree completely with you, Nick, that we should strongly recommend wear a mask, but I don't think you can put a mandate in and you can't put above and beyond what the state or the county has opposed. Then you are opening yourself up to liability. And that's
I would disagree with you, Bob.
I would already disagree with you, Nick.
Well, I'm okay. I'm just saying that there's other schools that are going mandatory. We are not, if we decide to go that route, we would not be the only school that's going mandatory masks. So I guess then the other schools.
We don't.
Well, that's fine, Nick, but we're talking about our school and what our school attorney said.
Right, I understand.
I can tell you that we definitely have a legal right to require masks if that's what we want to do. But what the attorney's saying, we have to enforce that if we do it. So
I think that's enforceable.
we could legally make a rule right now. If you made a motion and banged down the gavel, well, it's not on the agenda, but we could have a dress code next year. You have to wear a polo shirt and khaki pants. And if we could do that, and it's within.
That is legal, even above and beyond what the state or.
Right, we can make a rule that masks are required, but we have to enforce it.
Well, look, we all know what a recommended mask is going to look like in school. It's going to look like 80% of people not wearing masks.
Correct.
It'll also only be as good as the teachers themselves. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're gonna be the ones enforcing it all day long.
Yeah, I mean, if we do, so say we do require masks, that's a huge discipline challenge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just another factor. I'm with you, Zoom. I'm listening. I'm taking it all in. But I see it, that's just another huge discipline factor all day long. Some teachers, maybe a little bit.
I think it is going to be a discipline factor. Like I said, it's a learned behavior. It's something you may have to enforce for the first week, but it's something that's not something that's difficult to do. We all put a pair of socks on every day. We all put a pair of shoes on every day. Unfortunately, this is where we are right now. And it's a covering that's over your face. So that we're not asking you to do something that is extremely difficult. It's easy. It's as easy as putting your seatbelt on. Okay. So to make something that's mandatory, we require kids to wear shoes to school. We're requiring you to put a mask on to come into the building. We know it works. We know it's going to protect you. We know it's going to protect them. We know it's going to protect everybody. If you want the building to stay open, I'm just saying, if you want the building to stay open as long as it can, you're going to have to wear masks. It's that simple. If you don't want to wear masks, I'm not telling you how long we're going to be available or how long we're going to be open, but it's not going to be very long. I can tell you that. I mean, you look at the data right now, you look at the data since just amongst hospital transmission of the virus, prior to making it mandatory for all hospital staff to wear masks, nursing homes included. They weren't wearing masks. And guess what? Staff was passing it on to staff members. And it became worse and worse and worse. Now that everybody's basically mandatory that you have to wear a mask, and some places are making them wear shields, you've seen that almost, I'm not saying it doesn't occur, but the rates are far less. Far less.
Hey, Nick, do you know of any daycares that are requiring masks on the kids?
I don't know, Therese. I know I can tell you for a fact that this weekend I was at a baseball tournament. There's a 2-year-old wearing one all day. didn't phase him. Like I said, if a 2-year-old can do it, didn't touch his face, was running around with a mask on. You know, it's a learned behavior. It's not going to come overnight. And that's why I said, if we decide that that's the route we want to go, which I'm totally in favor of, I think that we put that information out with parents to start working with their kids right now. Like, hey, you guys, in order to go to school, we got to wear masks. Now, there may be some exceptions in a sense where we have special needs kids that aren't going to be able to wear masks. And that's something that we may have to, but other than that, there's really no, you know, some people will make the argument that they retain CO2. That's not true. Some people may say they're a health hazard when it's above a certain degree temperature. And I would say that's not true. It's more of an intolerance, but it's not a health problem.
How comparable are the masks to the shields?
What's that?
How comparable are the masks and the shields?
Masks, I can't give you specifics on that, but I do know masks are more, they do protect better. You know, a lot of places now, like for instance, for me, obviously I'm a little bit higher risk than everybody else, but at times I have to wear both. But for the most part, if we're just walking around the hospital, we just have a mask on.
All of my healthcare providers have a mask and a shield.
Yeah.
Everybody that we've seen, of course, they're with types of folks they're dealing with, but
right.
They're all even just off, even, I mean, in all areas, they all have masks and shields.
And I know I've talked to some other school, you know, there's been talk of like putting a piece of plexiglass in front of the teachers. And I guess my recommendation would be have the teachers wear the mask and the shield if a student if they needed to go to the desks and talk to the students versus putting that plexiglass shield up. I think it's going to be, the teachers are going to be a lot more mobile if they have that ability where they can walk around, you know, if they have the plastic shields and the masks.
Is there anything with the quality of the mask? Can it be a single ply piece of cloth or is what?
They're saying that the bandanas, you know, that the bandanas that people wear over them aren't nearly as effective as a standard cloth mask or a medical grade masks. That you know, obviously the real thick cotton ones are going to absorb moisture during the day, especially on hot, humid days.
Well, if we required it for all students, would you recommend that the kid is just required to have something over their face, or is something approved up to a certain level?
I would think, Kale, you know, there's a lot of them are going to the neck gaiters too, where they wear the gaiter and they just pull it up over their nose kind of thing. I think that those work as well. They're a little thicker than the actual bandana, you know, the old school bandanas that people wear. You do see those around, but they're not nearly as effective as the mask itself. Obviously, you want it covering the nose and the mouth as much as you can.
But we're not going to know it's any kind of certain level of quality unless we provide it ourselves. So
right, and I know New Glarus. My understanding is New Glarus they bought every one of their students. I think they purchased over 1,000 masks, from what I was told by an individual. So that's maybe something we may look at is you know, hey, do we purchase masks for the kids? And say, hey, these are your one mask, you know, that we buy 2 masks for the kids and say, hey, you know, rotate them out, take these home and, you know, rotate them out.
Well, we've already ordered 2 cloth face masks for each student for them to rotate, whether they were required or recommended, but.
Right. You know, I would probably say if we're going to do that, you get the washable ones, you know, and we can make recommendations to wash them, you know, hey, you know, these, you should definitely wash these. Now, whether or not they go home and do that. I know, Kale, we talked about providing masks and then washing them ourselves and then giving back to them. I don't think that's, you know, the more and more I think about it, that's probably not a good idea. We had an issue with the washing machine or something. And quite honestly, I probably wouldn't want to wear someone, even though it was washed at the school, I probably wouldn't want to put a mask on that someone else had been wearing.
I've had several teachers that have requested the shields instead of masks.
Yeah, I know my wife's she's gonna wear both. I mean, that was kind of her thing. She says she'd rather have that than a shield, than a plastic plexiglass. It gives her more ability to move around the room if need be. You know, and those aren't. I mean, I wear a shield and it's not that bad with a mask all day, every day, and it's just like I said, it's a learned behavior. It's something you just got to get used to. Obviously, the first couple of days, it's not fun, but You
But
know,
you're saying in order to be effective, it needs to be with a mask,
not,
or could it be?
ultimately, the mask is the most important. The shield is kind of an extra. I think if you're going to be out and about, moving in the rooms, and they're going to be really, really close, obviously the shields are going to help you. It's going to give you that double layer. What you worry about is any moisture or anything into the eyes, or any secretions or any aerosolization that can get into your eyes. You know, glasses will help too, but obviously a shield's going to be better. I mean, shield's going to actually cover your mouth too, along with your mask. So you're kind of getting a double protection as well.
So a shield can't replace a mask. You can't.
I would say no. If you're going to choose one or the other, I would go mask. I wouldn't give them an option. A mask is much more important than a shield. Obviously, both of them are better, but you're not. I mean, for students, I think if we can get students to wear masks, I think that's a no-brainer. And I think that's the best. Student and staff or anybody in the closed building right now should have a mask on.
Ultimately, it's our decision in all reality, and we can legally do it. So we're not gonna decide tonight. You wanna send something out like the survey we just sent out to staff and parents? Because if staff's not on board, we're not gonna be able to follow through with this. You know what I'm saying? Because they're the ones that are gonna be pushing this whole thing. Same way with parents. If we get a large majority that think it's stupid or don't agree, it's gonna be even tougher.
I think it said that in that survey, didn't it? Yeah.
But Red, I don't know if the teachers really necessarily, I mean, I see your point. I don't know if they necessarily need to be on board because, I mean, there's people at the hospital that weren't on board about having to wear masks when they weren't with patients, and they were told you have to wear a mask. So, I mean, yeah.
This is one of those things that you want people to be on board, but it doesn't have to be a popular idea for it to be the right decision to make.
I agree. I don't have to ask them, that's fine.
Not that we shouldn't ask, we should.
No, I agree. I mean, I mean, especially when the teachers are concerned about their safety, the mask is only going to protect them. It's not going to hurt them. And ultimately, I said the worst case scenario, let's say 5 years comes down the road and we found out that masks they didn't work. What's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't hurt you. You know, but the current data right now suggests that masks do work, and it is what it is. It's not a political statement. It's not.
Right, and the data shows that masks work.
I can tell you right now, the mask I had, I'm sorry, Christopher, this mask I had given me tonight, that ain't gonna work. I wouldn't paint anything with this thing and stand within somebody else within 2 or 3 feet and think that my big mouth ain't putting some stuff on.
Right.
So you're gonna have to if you're going with a mask, it's gonna have to be better than this thing I got.
Yeah, well, I can't see that, Red, so I don't know.
What's that? Would you like me to put it on for you?
No, you're so far away, it's hard to see on.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, it's just a t-shirt.
No, that's fine, but I'm just saying, that's a whole other discussion on what type of mask or, you know, the thickness or what have you.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I would be, just my own personal opinion, recommended, but we can't require.
I agree.
Because there are hospital employees that are going down to the grocery store without masks. I've seen personally big groups at weddings, funerals, races.
But they're not a public facility, Teresa. I mean, those hospital employees, they're definitely wearing their masks at work.
Right.
But what they do in their own time or what they do, I can't make you wear a mask when you go home. But I can tell you that if you're going to come into our buildings, that you need to have this mask on.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just thinking with a group of kids where the data also shows there's very small percentage of the kids that are actually contracting it.
No, there's kids contracting it.
Well, I know, but it's a small percentage.
Well, there's a small percentage now, but as the data is coming out, more and more kids are becoming affected with it.
But wasn't one of the reasons that they pushed for the opening though, Zub, was because we found out that actually, I mean, everybody can get it, everybody can die from it, right? And regardless of age.
Yep.
But they've also came out that the kids were less likely to even transmit as well. I'm more concerned about our staff, to be honest, as much as
transmission
anything.
among students has been shown that it's small. The kids' viral loads are much smaller than adults.
Right.
But I mean, we everybody can pick apart everybody's data. For instance, Israel is the school system that comes to mind on my mind, where they opened up, just basically did what they did, and they're one of the few school districts that had, or school systems that had to reshut back down. Now, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, they all kept their schools open and had little to no transmission of virus. But Israel was completely opposite, where they had a large outbreak among students and they had to shut it down. So they reopened and then had to shut down. So I don't know what the answer is on that. Anybody can extrapolate data to prove a point. All I'm saying is, if we want our schools to stay open as long as possible, the only way that that's going to occur is with masks.
I agree, and I think the only way to do it is to require it. What a requirement means, maybe is different. There may be times where they can take it off, of course.
I think recess, you can take it off. I think when you're eating.
Ed.
Ed. I don't know what that was. I think that was still the discussion of whether or not we were going to bring in specials into the rooms, or whether they were going to go outside, or what they were going to do.
How about athletics?
I don't.
That's a whole different issue.
What's
I
that?
think it's a slippery slope, and they're going to tell us what we're going to need to do by the time school starts.
And you might be right, Joe. You totally might be right that they may just say this is what's going to happen, and if you guys are going to do it, it would make things a lot easier, I think, than leaving it up to us.
I won't dispute the fact that there's more cases, but we're also testing a hell of a lot more than we were before too.
But you have to look at the percentage of positive results, and that's way up. It's like at 8-10% right now.
Yeah.
I think we're
If you
asking.
test more, that's going to go up too.
What's that?
If you test more, that's going to go up.
No, that's
Not necessarily.
positive results. So if you test 100 people and 8% are positive, that's 8 people. If you test 1,000 people,
there you go. You can.
Yeah.
Put the facts however you want too. I mean, everybody has their own beliefs.
How did it go with summer school? The masks you were asked to wear, right?
They were asked to wear them entering, exiting the building, and in the hallways.
Rooms were small enough to separate them.
But some rooms, the kids left them on. Some rooms, they took them off. I believe, I was out of K1, every one of the kids came with a mask. I didn't have to give any, they all had them.
Well, you were told.
They knew that ahead of time.
Yeah, they knew that ahead of time.
I've seen a lot of schools doing, please, like the recommendation of, please send your kid in a mask to school, because they're gonna be amongst other people. When they leave, we'd like, to see them take them. But most of them have said in the classroom, it's optional. And nothing's been mandated other way, but it's been strongly encouraged, whereas the classroom, it seems like it's been.
I could see like if kids are in a classroom at their own desk and they're spaced out as far as they can, just working solo. I mean, what can
Well,
they
I
take?
get that, but I
can they
also
take some
see it as a
mask off if that's-
teacher in the front of a room, say it's this room, there's 15 to 17, 18 kids in here. If that teacher's up there and she wants to just wear a screen or be behind plexiglass, if she's lucky enough or gracious enough to have that few kids that they can do the social distancing, so be it. There's gonna be other rooms that they're not able to. It's all work in progress, I guess.
I think, we're asking staff and students to come back to a situation where there's risk. We know that masks help reduce that risk. We know that if we don't require them, probably a majority of our students aren't going to wear them.
We're still not putting seatbelts in school buses either, though. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I understand, but we can continue to add for student safety.
But this is clear. It's clear that masks help, and we've got a lot of nervous staff. And I think they're going to be nervous no matter what. But this is one thing we can do that we know that works, that can help that.
We also have staff that aren't nervous.
Well, I think
We do. They should be.
the survey says that perfectly. 71% agreed that masks should be worn, or 71 people, and 71 people disagreed. And then there was neutral, you know? So that tells you right there that there's plenty of both.
Yeah, we can all agree that wearing masks stinks. I mean, that's true, but
What?
that wearing masks is not fun. I mean, it's uncomfortable, but
It's not, I mean, you're right, it's not, but like I said, I don't mean to keep preaching, but it is a learned behavior. I've been doing it for 20 years, and if a 2-year-old can do it, guys, we can do it. And it's not that hard. Do I think hopefully we don't have to do it the whole year, I mean, or whenever, but ultimately we're not going to be in a place we need to be until there's a vaccine. You know, that's our only going to be, that's the magic bullet. And right now we don't have that. What we have are the tools that we have, and that's our best protection against this. What we're facing is a mask. It just is.
Will we ever take action on that, or just wait it out until we see what public health and the state does?
I think I'm going to take an action next first meeting in May. August. I mean, first meeting in August, excuse
Should we
me.
do that though, or just wait and see what kind of guidelines are put down from?
I would be shocked if the state says we have to wear masks, and I will be more shocked if Lafayette County says we have to wear masks. I don't think that's happening.
I don't believe that.
I think it's gonna fall to us to make that decision. So, yeah, I think we'll have to take action one way or the other. Yeah,
No, I agree. I think we have time. I think though that the sooner we can, at least if we were to decide to go that route, you give parents the ability to start working with their children at home on just wearing them while they're watching TV, or, you know, get used to wearing them. Because it is going to be difficult the first couple of days to wear them. And, you know, I had somebody just message me now about, you know, what are your feelings about when it's warm? You know, maybe we look at doing a virtual day when we know a day it's going to be 95, 96 degrees out. And then instead of sending the kids to school with masks, we say, okay, this day is going to be, we know we've got a heat warning. We're going to do a virtual day at home. We have that technology available. And, you know, if it buys us a couple more days, you know, I think it's worth it. I really do. You know, I talked to some physicians at the hospital today about their thoughts, and, you know, they all thought the same thing. So
I would say we're on moving. I mean, everybody needs to think about it. Let's move on to electives on the list.
So that was something that came up with our staff. You want me? You know, just what they would look like, because we talked about, like, for 7th and 8th grade, 5th hour, they have band and they have chorus. Well, it's from those meetings we had, they can still do individual lessons. They could pull them and do them individually.
That's another question I was going to ask Lori. Are we currently doing band lessons right now?
Yes.
Outside, yep.
Outside.
One at a time, outside, out front.
Okay.
Chairs facing the same direction and 6 feet apart.
Okay. And how many students are they doing at a time?
Yeah, it's one at a time.
It's one at a time?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because those, we're not planning on doing those in the building, correct?
Well, I think that's something that we need to talk about.
We were, after school started, in the room, facing the same direction, 6 feet apart, one-on-one.
No, I don't think you can do band lessons where you're drums maybe, or piano, guitar, something like that. But anytime you're blowing into an instrument, you have the potential to aerolize that virus. Even if you're 6 feet, it's been shown to go up to 27 feet. So I don't think that's probably a good idea unless you're in a negative pressure room.
So we've been one-on-one. And would that be the same for individual singing lessons?
Yes. Yeah. I would recommend no choir indoors. I know we actually talked about that today in the meeting about somebody from Shellsburg was wondering why they were still doing band lessons as well. Somebody must have posted something on it. I can't give specifics on it, but they were asking that they probably shouldn't be doing that.
Isn't the recommendation band and chorus or high risk endeavors?
Yes.
Indoors.
You're aerolizing the virus. So anytime you're putting that aerolizing that virus, it's considered high risk, even greater than distances of 6 feet. So unless you're in a negative pressure room or you have an N95 mask on. So
what you're saying is that if the band or choir director had an N95 mask on, it would be fine to have a band lesson?
No, it would be fine if we had a negative pressure room, because that virus is still going to be stuck in the room.
Well, that's not possible.
Right. So that's right. So it takes that out of the equation.
We need a tent.
Right.
Well,
Right.
is what we're doing okay right now outside?
What's that?
Is what we're doing right now? 6 feet apart?
I would say you're probably okay. You're outside.
We're having music in the park and there's a huge crowd there, so.
Yeah. Are they?
It's also, no,
Yeah,
but
they're not.
It's somebody's private, that's somebody's private thing, you know what I'm saying? We're not taking those people in. I mean, that's the difference. You know, what they're doing downtown is different from.
You know, are they blowing in a horn? Are they, you know, that's the big issue. I mean, they're showing right now that, you know, that kind of blowing, singing, loud, screaming, those have been all, you know, areas of concern.
We have practice rooms, right? In high school, we do.
We have practice rooms here too, yes. So then the other question for the electives, because a lot of our electives at the 7th and 8th grade level are kids, you know, like our service learning. That would be something that would be very difficult.
I'm sorry, you cut out, Lori.
I said, so what some of the questions the 7, 8 teachers had were about electives like service learning, you know, different things where they're interacting with people. And one of the things we talked about is, do we, for this year, take a break on some of those things and do some academic remedial or catch-up intervention from being out of school for the last.
So when you say those, like, what would those, give me some examples of what those would be prior to COVID, like those,
Electives?
yeah, that they would
Like
do.
Danielle does a service learning one.
Yep.
Where they would go to the food pantry. You know, they cleaned out some kennels. They would get together, groups of kids would get together and do different projects.
The cooking classes.
Cooking classes, yep.
So, yeah, all of those electives would break up your cohort.
Right, exactly.
And which would defeat the purpose if we're trying to establish
Right.
a clean environment in school. It might be wise to think of alternatives, and also where you're traveling and going in and out of other places within the community. I would discourage that. I don't know what other folks think, but I would discourage that.
Well, we were just wondering about halting those classes and focusing more on remediating some of those academic skills.
That might be a better choice.
I think that would be a better choice.
I mean, if our focus is gonna be to keep those kids in groups that don't change,
And they can do that in those rooms.
then you have to, right?
Right,
I think
exactly.
something else for us to think about too, guys, is and this just kind of came to my mind is, I think we definitely need to have an isolation room in each building in case we do get a child that becomes ill during school, or we happen to catch, I don't know what our policy is going to be on temperature checks. If we decide to go down that route and we get a kid that shows up and he's got a temp, what are we going to do with them? You know, and to have an isolation room where that's available, that we can stick a student if need be until a parent can come pick up that student. So I think that's going to be important that we have one of those isolation rooms in
It might be the band room.
in each in each building.
We have kind of talked about that.
Okay.
What about,
That's gonna
like,
happen.
along the same lines, hand sanitizers, cleaning, hand washing? Are we going to have it especially for little people scheduled on a regular basis? Is that going to be controlled? How?
So RJ, this is Lee.
Yeah.
I have hands-free hand sanitizers stations that will be here on Monday. We're gonna have them at every entrance at the Dems building, and then I've talked with Aaron, and we're gonna hit the 3 main entrances. He's gonna have kids come in at his building. So kids and staff will have the opportunity to hand sanitize and obviously wash their hands as much as they want to or need to.
So like, I mean, minimum those kids be washing their hands 3 times a day, minimum.
The good news is, Nick, is half of the classrooms in DEMS have sinks and soap dispensers in them. Everything from K through 4 has a sink and soap dispenser in the classroom.
Okay.
The 5 through 8 will have to take them to the bathrooms, but we still take care of the lower grades.
And whether, maybe we look at providing, and I don't know if that's even an issue, we provide those little Perel bottles that the kids can carry in their pocket. That has, where they can schedule like, hey, every 2 hours, kids, let's take 2 minutes out and everybody wash their hands.
I think for the last several years, hand sanitizer has been on the class list, the school supply list.
Yeah. And maybe it's just a simple task that the teacher sets a time every 2 hours. Hey, she walks around and puts a squirt in all the kids' hands. But minimum, they should be doing that 3 times during the day. I would say that's the minimum.
Would you rather that, Nick, or would you rather them wash their hands 3 times a day?
I think are you going to be able to get up 20 kids and get them to the sink and wash for, the 20 to 30
seconds? Yeah.
Yeah. Or is it going to be more convenient? I mean, obviously hand washing is equally as effective, if not more. But the hand sanitizers will work too. It's going to be much quicker, for the teacher just to walk around and give a squirt to everybody than have every student get up, walk to the sink, wash their hands, and then walk past I'm just trying to minimize movement, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But I guess I would leave that up to the teacher, what they prefer. If they want to get their kids up and wash their hands with soap and water and just make sure they're doing it right, that's just going to take more time.
Soap and water is definitely better than hand sanitizer.
Right.
Especially with COVID, they said you have to have 70% of alcohol in there, and a lot of them.
Yeah, but most hand sanitizers are at least 70, if not more. Right. The hand sanitizer are harder on the hands. I mean, they dry out your hand. The alcohol is going to dry out your hands and things like that. So
We'll make them tough.
What about temperatures? What's people's thoughts on taking temps? All right, you guys plan on doing that?
It's required or recommended from the CDC of coming back and our health person said we have to follow that, doing a screening. Now, we get to define what the screening is ourselves, but temperature check is definitely involved in that process somewhere.
Yep.
Whether we ask the parents to do it at home first or we do it here is the question.
Right.
We're doing a temperature check now for summer school?
Yes.
Yes.
How's that going? I mean, I know it's a day.
It went fine. It's more time consuming than I thought it was going to be. But...
Though, and I think that we can figure stuff out with it is, and I know that's came up as a resistance for doing it at school. I think you need to have your temperature checked at least to get into the building.
Mm-hmm. I think, there were some people that make the argument that it's a placebo effect for kids because most of the kids are going to be afebrile. Most of the kids are asymptomatic anyway. So it's going to be, we may pick up 1 or 2, 3 kids that would typically would slip by. And that's good. I mean, if we can catch 1, 2, or 3, but to rely on that as an indicator of somebody that has COVID it's just not going to happen because most kids are going to be asymptomatic and most kids are going to be afebrile. The big thing we need to stress to the parents in letters of not giving their kids ibuprofen and Tylenol because they wake up with a fever in the morning and then sending them to school and they walk in our building and they're afebrile and then 4 hours later when their ibuprofen and Tylenol wear off, they're febrile and now we've got a problem. So we've really got to, I think, stress that to parents that we all know that it's happened where mom and dad got to work and kid wakes up with a fever and we give them Tylenol and ibuprofen and keep our fingers crossed that they'll make it through the day and their fever not spike. So
are you less in favor of temperature checks?
I could go either way on it. I really could. I think you're going to, if the CDC is saying it, I think we should probably do it, but to rely on that as an indicator of whether or not a kid's got COVID, I think is not.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an extra safety measure. I think we'll maybe catch 1, 2, 3 kids that might exhibit symptoms, but they could have something else going on. Just because they have a fever doesn't mean they have COVID.
Right.
Yeah, so we should definitely have the ability to take temperatures.
Yeah. And Lori, what are you guys using now for your temperature checks? Are you guys using the infrared one where you just point it at their forehead, or are you using Like
We
a
only
year,
have, I think we only have one of those in this building. The other ones are the ones that go across the forehead.
yeah. I mean, if we can get the infrared ones, that may save you some time where you just point them at their head and it'll give you like 3 colors and like a red, yellow, or green. And obviously red would be bad. It means that you have high temp.
I guess the question is, when and where do we do that? Do we want to do it before kids come into school or after they get into their classrooms?
I wouldn't, if you're going to do it, you need to do it as they're coming into the building because you don't want them to come into the building and then find out that they have the fever. Like when we come into the hospital, the first thing they do is they check us.
Well, the problem is though, you're still gonna have kids with the fever coming into the building because you're gonna have to get a hold of somebody to come and get them.
Well, that's why we have the isolation room. Immediately go there versus they come into a room with already their fever and now they're with 15 of their other classmates.
And are non-compliant and have wandered around the hallway for 15,
Right.
20 minutes
So
prior.
the earlier you can get to them, if you're going to do temperatures, the better. Because you're going to.
Well, I get your point, but if they're already on the bus, that we're still trying to make it better. We're not gonna have anything perfect. Nothing's gonna be perfect with the plan. I mean,
guess
Rick's
that would-
good point though.
And I'd be curious, Brad, I'd be curious as to, and maybe that's something that Kale can do is, have we reached out to Lamers to see what their plan is? Do they have a plan for social distancing on the bus? Because I mean, I would make an argument that the buses are probably the most dangerous in a sense because you're close, you're compact, and I mean, there's not a lot of airflow in that bus. I mean, unless they got every window wide open. I mean,
Yeah,
I would think that would be your greatest risk. And you know, what's Lamer's plan? Do they have a plan? Are they going to require the kids to all to wear masks before they get on the bus? Are they going to temperature check the kids on the bus? Are they going to alternate every other seat on the bus? I don't know how many kids are even going to ride the bus anymore. I mean, those are all things I think we have to look at.
having all the buses run the country routes, and that according to Mike, that's approximately half the kids on any bus are from the country and half are from the city.
Mhm.
They're gonna run the country routes and then drop those kids off first and then go back to the library or whatever stop and pick up the city kids and bring them later. And then going after school would be the reverse, take the city kids to the library first, come back and get the country kids. He didn't discuss temperature checks or masks.
They're what?
He didn't discuss temperature.
I think that's something we need to ask them. I mean, New York City had to do, that was one of their biggest issues where they had their outbreak was on their public transportation.
I know when we discussed that at negotiations, about alleviating, and what Cal mentioned was, to alleviate them, because the major crowding currently occurs when they pick up the kids
on the city
at the in-town bus stops.
Yeah. And we may see significant drop in the kids that ride the bus. Parents just don't want their kids to ride the bus anymore. They may make an effort to drop them off and pick them up. I don't know. I mean, that's something.
That question was on the survey.
Yeah.
That's pretty a circus.
Shit show.
So
if we did do temperature checks at schools, Aaron and Lori, how would you guys do that? As far as,
We'd have to have several entrances.
and then what about the kids that are dropped off at 20 after 7 in the
And
morning?
those are all things that we have to think about, because we do have kids that are here early. And what Aaron and I talked about is, like Nick said, not having those common areas. So basically the kids are outside until it's time to come in, and then they come in and they go right to their classrooms. I mean, our little kids have done that for years. The K1 stands outside down here, 2-4 stands outside down there. So
right.
we'll
Raining,
have,
freezing.
and then I think our middle school will have stand out.
We talked about that.
Is there a thought possibly of having then if we're going to be sending right to the classrooms and some different things, just as a thought process of having a consistent arrival time for staff?
I would think that would probably be the most effective. Maybe I'm wrong. The kids, as soon as they show up, they come through wherever entrance they're designated to, they get the temp check and they head right to the room.
And that's the plan for the high school that I've kind of put in my head is, depending on what we do temperatures, but all of our doors are normally open in the morning. So they've got a lot of entrances they can get in, but we're going to reduce that down to 2 or 3. Obviously you're going to have a staff member there to take the temperature if that's what we choose. But the plan would be to allow backpacks this year is kind of in my opinion as well, because might limit them having to go to their lockers every period. Because that's just kind of a mosh pit, you know, because they're all right next to each other for a couple minutes between each passing period, and just keeps kids flowing a little bit more. But when they get there in the morning, and I'm going to kind of strongly recommend for kids, hey, there's no gathering in the cafeteria like they've done for years. So there's really no reason to show up until, 7:45 or whatever, and get to their first assigned class, and kind of go from there. So those are all things I've been kind of going through. Socialization, which has always been a big part of high school, is going to look very, very different moving forward. And our kids are going to have a rough transition with that, but they're going to have to get used to it.
Well, and I have kids in this building that arrive by 7:20. And I mean, our beginning of the year letters all say there won't be supervision until 7:45, but we have some kids still figuring that out and who's going to supervise that.
Yeah, and that's another thing where you have to reach out and work with the parents, as much as you can.
The other thing too with temperatures, I know that we all were sticker shock with those ones Kale had showed us like on the iPad. But the thing to remember with those is it's gonna scan, like those have the ability to email the picture so that you have that all on file and documented for staff and students, what their temperature was, the date, the time, that kind of stuff. So I know that, they're obviously more expensive, but the reality of the trail we're going right now is we're gonna be spending that much money anyway, between the time it's gonna take to chart all of this and do it and pay the staff and everything else. So obviously we're not taking action, but something we should all be thinking about.
Those are like $2,000 a pop, right?
Right. The contract right now for a staff is 8 to 4, right?
7:50 to 3:50.
Oh, okay. So is that like a negotiations thing if we did 7:30 to 3:30?
It would be, because that's in our handbook.
Okay.
I'm just curious. We've tried over the years to go earlier, but then, you've got families with young children, and then we have some staff that would like to do the 8 to 4. So it's kind of all over the board. I mean, we have teachers here as early as 6:30 in the morning.
Sure.
And teachers here as late as 8, 9 o'clock at night, so.
Yeah.
But I know that's a concern of some teachers, is the supervision. Is that going to be increased? Am I going to be expected to be at school at 7:30 every day to help take temperatures? Am I going to be expected to be with the same students all day long? What about my preps? What about lunch? Those kind of things that have to be worked out yet.
Well, I don't know, their preps are covered, but the FIAD and stuff we were told was going into the rooms for those breaks, but now after talking tonight, we might not have those classes, so I don't know what that's gonna fit.
Don't we have to apply it for high school? It's a graduation requirement.
Yeah.
Well, they can still teach off a chalkboard.
I suppose you don't have it for the seniors that haven't taken it yet.
Well, and even
But
basic
still be able
course,
to
there are
teach off a
other things those
chalkboard
teachers can
about
teach.
basketball or something, or health related or whatever,
Yeah, music appreciation.
Yeah, something buys time.
And, with band at least, there is smart music where the kids can do the thing at home. And I mean, you can do some remote lessons. But the point about lunch and prep time was a good one. You guys have potential solutions for those things?
Well, we're looking at having kids eating in the classrooms. Supervision is going to be an issue because the teachers at the classrooms they'll go to will have a assigned lunchtime at that point. So those people who are on lunch supervision are going to be wandering the halls, making sure kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And But again, if, those are the things that you're gonna have to work through. I usually take at least one lunch period. I know Mr. Uppin always takes lunch period, and there's usually a staff member that joins us. So as we kind of finish up the master schedule, we'll have to look at what type of availability we have for staff to be able to do that during lunch periods.
Well, and cleanup's gonna be an issue too, because if the kids are eating in their classroom and then they don't leave the classroom, we're gonna have to look at possibly some kind of a modified menu where we don't have a syrup day or a spaghetti day, something where it's a little more friendly to the cleaners, where the kids could throw away their garbage. And we don't necessarily have to deep scrub everything like we do in the cafeterias.
Connie was asking me about that today of ordering things for the first part of school, and I said, for the first month, plan on paper bag lunches with cold sandwiches, and then we'll see how that goes and go from there.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I think if we're trying to put things back as much as normal, I think we should be able to provide hot lunches.
Well, the plan right now is you'd have a choice between a cold turkey, a ham, and a PBJ, and all the things that go with it.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I think if we want to put it back, for a lot of kids, it's the best meal. And if we're trying to bring it back and have some sense of normalcy, we should be able to provide some hot lunches. Maybe it's not every day, but I think that we need to do that or think about it unless it's operationally not feasible.
What we talked about was for sure going to hot lunches eventually, but at least the first 2 weeks just to get school going and get a routine doing the
Well, there's a difference between, you said a month, and now it's 2 weeks. Which is it?
Well, it's both. We're gonna, for the first 2 weeks would be the bag lunches only. And for the second 2 weeks would be a lot of bag lunches and maybe start to incorporate some hot meals that the kids have a choice in. But you're still gonna have kids that pick the peanut butter and jelly, even if you offer something hot.
Yeah, I think that's a decent plan to start with, but, I agree that sandwiches and brown bag lunches can't be our long-term solution.
Right.
I mean, we can figure something out better than that, but it'll probably take some effort and that might mean no syrup ever, but we have other things we can do.
But I do think, I do agree. I think it is a good plan to get started and then see how things go and then adjust from there.
So prep time and like substitute teachers, I've already talked about subs a little bit, and that's gonna be a problem finding subs and.
That's gonna be a huge problem. I think that's gonna be our biggest problem.
What do we do? I mean, are teachers gonna have to cover for other teachers on their preps?
Well, it sounds like we'll have some lunch people for the first couple of weeks, doesn't probably help.
Yeah, it's just PB and J.
Right.
Well, I gotta get the meals to them. Are they coming to get them or are we taking them to them?
There's all things we got.
Well, they're coming to get them, they're gonna leave the cafeteria.
I would say they probably just a box to each room.
It'd be nice, though, and that could rotate to the cafeteria, like on Mondays, one class, you can still start out in the cafeteria, but to break up being confined.
Not everybody needs to eat in the room.
Right.
You'd still be spread out, going to the cafeteria.
And you can stagger the kids going to get their stuff and bringing them back to their rooms. I mean, if you had to, just stagger it. So you don't have everybody in there at once or lines waited, down the hallway like it usually is. Those are all things that.
And I'm still.
A lot of this is going to be a work in progress. We can make all these, I think a lot of it's going to be a work in process until we, just workflow issues, and we're going to think we have it, and we're going to get to the first day and it's not going to work. And, it's going to be, I think, Lori and Aaron, unfortunately, a lot's going to rely on you guys to try to figure something out on the fly.
I'm still looking at allied arts coming into the classroom, so art, music, those things, so those teachers can have their prep time,
Mm-hmm. But what about the idea instead of the teachers? I mean, maybe you give some of those younger kids, an extra recess or something, or, just to get them outside, and then you can give that teacher the prep. And is that an option?
Like have supervision outside.
I think we just have to sit down and really just play with everything, and, there are a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, so with all these things that are just discussion for tonight, do you think there'll be opportunity in the next 3 weeks, Aaron and Lori, to meet with staff and kind of get some feedback from staff as far as maybe they've got some brilliant idea that we haven't thought of yet, that kind of thing?
So after we had our meeting the other day, Aaron and Kayla and I reached out to my teachers and asked them to get together as teams and brainstorm thoughts, ideas, questions, everything that you can come up with, and then get everything to me so I can look through it and look at what people's ideas are. And maybe there are some things in there that would be some great solutions. Because I think there are a lot of people with a lot of great ideas.
I mean, if you're not gonna be using your cafeteria, I know we want to keep kids in wings possibly and some things like that, but that doesn't mean that one wing can't use it. We're not gonna be, evidently, you're not gonna be using much of the gym or the cafeteria. Maybe you can take and feed 100 kids each day there, so you know what I mean? Just all possibilities is what I'm saying, you know what I mean?
Right, and we talked today a little bit about, so can Fayette still go outside? That's more time for kids to be outside.
So why not?
Could it be that one Fayette teacher is using the gym, has the whole gym, so then that's more room? One's outside, or when the weather gets cooler, one's in the gym, one's doing maybe some kind of a health unit or something like that within the classroom. That way the gym's still getting used, they're still getting exercise, and they're still having those things. So I think there are lots of ideas, we just need to.
Sounds like a contract. Contract chasing nightmare.
Well, but then, and that's the other.
As long as you're
piece.
still
Are we
with your
gonna-
class.
But yeah, they'd still be in one group.
They'd still be in that same group they were with all day.
Right. Ideally, I mean, the goal, guys, is to keep
Like,
as many kids together as possible, the same group. Because if you do get someone that tests positive, then it's as far as social, as far as following those individuals, it makes it much easier to do that. Problem is when you got them mixing with 350 kids, then you have no idea.
So Nick, what about like, transferring through the building, so second grader, the Fayette teacher comes and gets them and escorts them to the gym with no other groups in the hallways. Does that pose a problem with other groups that are going to be in the hallways in 5 minutes?
I don't think so. I mean, we all, I mean, at the hospital, we're all walking in the hallways together. I mean, you're still going to have a high traffic areas that you're not going to be able to avoid. And that's once again why I bring up the whole mask thing. If you're covering yourself, you're eliminating, if you were to cough during that, or you were to, that's what you're worried about. If a kid walks down the hallway or he coughs or he's screaming at one of his buddies down the road, you're not spreading that all over on the contact surface areas. So that in itself, you're gonna eliminate. Now, whether it's gonna eliminate it 100%, I can't give you that information, but it does reduce the risk. And you're gonna have those areas. We just don't have that ability not to. And we're just trying to minimize the most amount of risks that we can. And, by walking, obviously, if we walk the group of 20 down the hallway by themselves, to where they need to go and nobody else is around, I think that's going to be okay. The problem is we don't want to have the second and fourth graders walking in the hall together, and then you find out one kid's positive, and then you don't know who they've been next to, or.
Yeah, I mean, it's been proven that travels on shoes, so we can open whatever can of worms we want. The reality is that it's not gonna be perfect.
No, I mean, and I think I told Red this. I said, you're asking us to pick we're in a bad scenario, and you're asking us to pick the best solution to a bad scenario. It's not.
Well, there's always there's the known unknowns, but it's the unknown unknowns that are going to throw us the curveball.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't think about it. We didn't plan for it. And I just, and just to reiterate what Red said earlier, for folks that are listening and watching, things we're talking about here, it's July 13th. It's a long way to September 1st.
Right.
And
right.
the virus itself is fluid. The situation in our community is fluid, and what authorities, whether it be federal, state, or local, that may mandate, we don't know, so try to do the best. If we can get the majority of the big things hammered out, and then just manage to the little things.
I mean, I think we're gonna fool ourselves if we don't think we're gonna have a positive at some point in school. It's just how long can we go without that? Somebody brought up an interesting point to me, and I asked today about it because I didn't know the answer. Is it if we've got a child or an individual that tests positive, will the health department report that to us? And if they don't report that to us, are the individuals legally responsible to report that they're positive, and can they still come to school? And so I don't have that answer. I hope someone is looking into that answer. They're not supposed to, right? Because it's considered a public health issue, but if somebody pushed that envelope that you can't deny me an education, if they're asymptomatic and they test positive and they still come to school, those are things I'm just throwing out there. I don't know the answer. I'm hoping that if somebody tested positive, that they would not come to school and press the issue, and which, those are.
But that falls into the other thing, which was discussed at negotiations a little bit, and that is, what do we do with staff members or students who are at a high risk, hit one of the high risk categories as identified by the CDC, or what do we do if they live with or provide care for someone that's in a high risk group or has been told to shelter in place, all of those things, and how do we deal with those situations?
Correct.
So what do we think can happen in the next 3 weeks that'll help prepare us to make some of these decisions on August 3rd?
To help prepare?
Questions maybe for administration.
I think we can gather some information, what are other districts looking at doing? I mean, we talked a little bit at that meeting about some of those things, but we might be able to get some more in-depth info, or, how many districts are requiring masks, how many are recommending, how are people handling the lunch situations, all those types of things. I think we get some more detail. Nobody wants to be the lone wolf out there right now. I think as districts, we need to be talking together. I talked to 2 of my colleagues today about, what are their ideas for music and choir? And I got some really good ones, to be honest with you, that would minimize the risk, because there's no singing, there's no brass instruments, there's no wind instruments, percussion. And one of their ideas is to kind of do a garage band type thing without, any of those types of things, for kids that still love music and want to be a part of it. So I think we need to reach out to some of those people and get some ideas of what they're thinking about. And we can easily do that in the 3-week time period, and have some of those examples, and maybe have a good idea what people are thinking about. One of the things that I stressed in our staff meeting was prepare to be flexible. It's gonna be that way all year. So you got to come up with different ideas than maybe what you normally teach as far as a curriculum. And I'm confident that all of our teachers at both buildings can do that. It's just going to take some time and take some effort. And we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, we can definitely have more information, I think, in that 3-week time period on a lot of different things that we've talked about tonight.
I'd like to find out on the public health director too, just tracing and those sorts of things, how that's gonna work, or can we be informed of someone, or is there something, those are all what they'll supply us, or do we supply them class lists or anything like that?
Do we need, is does it make sense to do any more surveys for staff? In the last week, I've heard from more staff members on one particular issue than maybe ever. I think a lot of staff are nervous, of course, and want to have some input. Is there a way that we can make that happen and you know, get their input and allow them to kind of help us make some of these decisions?
What more did they want to give input on that wasn't on the original? Did they have questions? I mean, I thought that was pretty in-depth.
Well, it was a spectrum of different messages I got, but I think they want to have input on some of these details, like how does the schedule work, you know? And I mean, every person that talked to me brought up masks, of course, but I think it's just details, like how is this going to work, how are electives going to work. I think they want guidance. I mean, they want to be told, but they also want a little bit of input on what they're going to be told.
I only had one reach out to me, and I just suggested that they talk to their supervisor.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and I think some of them did do that as well.
But obviously, like,
I think too, though, we need to keep in mind too that our expectations for the teachers, we don't want to spring that on them, you know, a week before school starts. I think they want to know and have a game plan of what we want from them. And I know it's a fluid situation and things are going to change quickly, but I think we can at least give the teachers, you know, we're not going to expect them, we're going to drop a week before school starts. This is what we want, our expectations.
I guess my point is we should do whatever is practical to include them in some of this decision making.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the questions on the climate survey, and I think
Lori and Kale and Aaron do that on a daily basis. There's no doubt in my mind that those three aren't reaching out to their peers or teachers, you know, on these decisions, you know.
Yeah, I'm just bringing it up because I think it needs to be deliberate and intentional in the next 3 weeks.
Well, get on.
Yeah, and I think too, we need to allow Lori and Aaron to lead too. I really do. I mean, I think that, they're able to make decisions on their own. I think what's in the best interest, and we don't always have to be there's going to be decisions that we should be involved in, but I think they need to have the leeway and the latitude to lead. And things aren't going to go the way we want them to, and we're not going to be able to come back to us and ask every approval of this and that. And they're going to have to make decisions, and they may not be easy decisions, but we're going to have to rely on them to make the best decision. And I think that that's important.
Great.
Yep.
I think one of the next 3 weeks, I mean, Aaron and Lori, you just reach out as much as your staff as you can and keep those lines of communications open and have them give whatever thoughts they have, you know, on some of these.
We will have a staff meeting and we'll open it up to everybody. We were talking today about setting up a group that could meet, maybe that included 2 teachers from each level and couple of board members, administration, and maybe a couple parents too, and lead and try to get together a few times and discuss.
Yeah, and the whole other part of this that we haven't talked about a lot tonight is the virtual aspect. So these teachers are coming back teaching in full-time in person, but also expected to teach virtually. So what is that?
Guys, do we have that technology to do, Kale, what you talked about, like if parents aren't comfortable with their kids going to school, that they can log on and see the teacher teaching in class? Do we have that technology available currently or no?
Oh, yes, and we shared with the teachers to be ready for that.
Okay. We do have that available, that if a parent's not comfortable sending their kid, they can at least log on every day and see the teacher teaching.
We told the teachers to be prepared for that. Almost certainly every teacher's going to have kids in that category. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a whole component of that too, though, that's not just watching a video at home. That's using Google Classroom and
yeah. But I didn't know we had that, that capability, because we didn't have that last year.
Well,
I don't know, do we have cameras?
All familiar with it. I mean, it was something that we definitely adapted
Yeah, that was my question, Aaron. Do we have cameras that allow them to do that?
Those laptops that you approved have come in and they're higher quality than the Chromebooks they were trying to work with last year.
All right, so on 21, there is fall sports on there. We already approved signing our name to that other proposal. I don't know if there's any further discussion we want to make on fall sports.
I think it's a wait and see.
In all honesty, yeah, I think with like Zoom said, it's a wait and see. I mean, right now I would, I don't think anyone wants to jump the gun and say, we're not having them. I mean, which really to me is the only action you can take is if you want to just flat out say, we're not going to have them at all. I think, again, we're going to have a lot of guidance. It's going to be a very fluid situation. But in terms of taking any action, I don't think anything is really required at this point, especially we will have the August 3rd meeting, which will be before any fall sports. Football doesn't start until that Thursday. So, I mean, if something does come up, you would have the opportunity to act on anything you need to before football started.
Pat, do you anticipate having some guidance from the WIA when the ADs meet?
Not even a little bit, to be honest with you, RJ. I think the WIA is going to really step back from this and say, we're not going to cancel anything. We're going to let you have it. And they're just going to let the cards fall, and that's what they're going to do. I think they got real gun shy with a lot of the heat they took for canceling state basketball and spring sports, and now they really aren't in a hurry to do anything big.
So going forward, you would recommend that people get their physicals. As of right now, we haven't said no to it. So students need to get their physicals and some things like that. So we're not saying no to it.
I have told coaches, parents, anyone that has asked me, I've spent the last, week and a half lining up officials still for games. I mean, I am proceeding as though everything is going to happen. So yeah, we've had parents coming in, getting physical cards and everything they need. And we're recommending, proceed as though everything's on schedule. As opposed to if we start telling them to wait, then you're gonna have 50, 60 kids maybe trying to get in for a physical last week of July.
Right. And that physical will be good probably for the spring anyway, for the season. If the season would be changed.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're wasting their money.
Yeah. And they do have, the WA did put out, usually you have to have a physical every 2 years. They did say, if you are not able to get in for a physical because of COVID, there is a form you can fill out that will basically keep you okay for a year.
Okay.
Now, I'm telling parents, do your level best, and I don't think around here that's a problem.
No, that's not a problem, Pat. You can get in pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's what most parents are finding out. I'm strongly encouraging. I think that's for bigger city areas where maybe the hospitals and the clinics aren't necessarily being open for such things, but yeah, I've not had a parent yet that's come to me and said, hey, I need that. I can't get a physical. I need that form. But it is an option if for some reason that were the case, so.
I guess fall sports are one of the things that I struggle with in us being consistent. And we just talked about all these restrictions we're putting into the schools that can't or won't really be applied to extracurricular activities. And you could throw the musical in there as well. I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, I don't think, we don't want to be the first school to say we're not going to do it, and I don't know that that's appropriate. But it is a discussion we need to have at some point.
One's a extracurricular and one's an elective. And out of that elective, they're the ones telling us we can't do choirs and things like that. Also, I mean, I know what you were suggesting. If we were the only ones on the block not to do sports, we would probably have, I would guess, a minimum of 20 to 30 kids check out of this district and go somewhere else also. So whether or not money has a factor or students here have a factor, but if we were the first ones on the block that said we were not doing sports, I'd put the over and under on 20 or 30 students minimum that would go somewhere else.
I totally agree with you, and my struggle comes in, so when it comes to education and teaching students, we have a responsibility. And that responsibility is to give them a safe and healthy environment to learn, in my opinion, amongst other things. But when it comes to an elective or to an extracurricular, that's a parent and a student's decision. That's not my decision to say you're taking choir, or you're taking band, or you're taking football or cross country or whatever. So I struggle with even saying you can't have a private band lesson. If that band teacher is comfortable having a private band lesson, and those parents are comfortable having a private lesson, what is it for me to say, you can't choose to do that? And I struggle with that, and I struggle with that when it comes to football, cross country, the musical. Like, there's kids that live and die for football just as much as there is for band or choir or the musical.
Absolutely.
And when they're choosing, or their parents are helping them choose, however that is, I'm really struggling with the fact that I'm gonna take that away from them. Now, in a classroom where they have to learn, I don't struggle as much taking away from going to a lunchroom, because we've got to try to keep the learning environment healthy. And I feel like we have to take those steps. But I don't feel right choosing an elective or an extracurricular or like that their weekend. Like, we don't have any say about that. That's their choice too.
I would also say to have control, I could imagine having control of that high school. When I say control, keeping control when you have a large majority of students, and I'm even talking about even band and some of these other things, and all these sports, a huge majority of students, if they had nothing to tie their education to, how are you going to control them? I just about ripped the building off and I had things tied to them. You know, so I don't know how you keep any control in the high school with no extra, these things we speak of. If it can't happen, I guess you deal with it. But it's much easier with them. And I'm just talking, not just control. I mean, you're keeping grades up. There's a lot of things, you know, for young men and women that when they can associate with something, it helps a lot.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. To Colleen's point, the only thing I would add is one affects the other though, right? So 8th grade sports, we keep those 8th graders in a cohort all day long until they go to practice at night, and then that's gone.
But you can't keep them from going to their friend's house.
Right, but that's on school activity. Sports are.
But it's a choice. Just like I've already had parents tell me that they're not sending their kids to school if we're open because they want them to stay away from people so that they can participate in sports. Well, that
doesn't make any sense.
All day, and then with the intention of coming to sports practice.
Well, that's a good thing you brought up. We should talk about that because that can't be allowed, right?
What is it?
That's that, to allow a kid to stay home and learn virtually, but then come to sports practice.
No.
There's no way we can allow that.
No.
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 I don't think anybody would agree to that.
No, I mean,
You don't agree.
virtually, if we're offering sport, you're gonna have to draw a line in the sand. I don't know how you can almost say no.
Me too.
I don't know.
One parent would argue and say, we're actually safer at home.
But stay home for sports too.
If you're staying home for fear of COVID, I don't know that your argument would stay valid for sports and say, well, I don't feel comfortable going to school, but I'll go out on the football field.
Not riding the bus, not riding the bus, not figuring out a way to take lunch, not figuring out, you know, a teacher and 20 other students being around all day. I get what you're saying, but it's gonna be an argument.
I think you could make a good argument for cross country, but the other ones are a little harder. football,
And don't we have to allow homeschooled children to
Yes, we do.
participate?
And that was one of the arguments.
But that homeschool is not virtual school.
But you can't control what the homeschool kids are doing at home to prevent whatever you're all scared of.
I mean, the only reason we're providing currently, the only reason we're currently providing virtual school is because you're not comfortable due to COVID, correct? We would not be offering virtual school if COVID didn't exist. So therefore, you could say, I don't understand why you would, I mean, there's your argument. If you're not coming to school, if you're going to virtual school, that means that you're not comfortable due to COVID.
Not necessarily. This could be the changing of the times, Nick.
Yeah, but we would never have virtual school, Red, if we did not have COVID. We would have the homeschool program.
I think that's the way schools are gonna have, I think you're gonna find out when COVID's gone, you're gonna see, we're gonna be asked to do a lot more virtual than what we are. I know that isn't right now, but I think that's probably where some of this is gonna go eventually.
It's bringing it quicker.
Yeah.
I think it all could be he said, she said. I don't know how much more we're going to accomplish tonight, but I think we need to move on a little bit.
Fair enough.
There again, maybe between now and next meeting, maybe Pat, you can reach out to some of your ADs and to see what they're talking about.
We have a meeting next week
See what they're thinking.
with all the conference ADs and local areas to kind of pool our ideas and see where people are at. As what I can tell you right now is every AD I have talked to is proceeding as though fall sports are going to happen on schedule. You know, again, not wanting to back up the process of paperwork and physicals and everything. So
A lot of these decisions are going to be made by health departments and people other than school boards. I totally believe that. There's going to be a lot of stuff come down the pipe in 3 weeks before school starts.
But not only that, Pat, I mean, just think if a kid's gonna stay home virtually, they're gonna allow them into, to go play sports. I mean, just to find out,
Why are we hashing this over again? Let's just move on.
I'll gather whatever I can over the next few weeks with my meetings and come back August 3rd with it.
All right, is there any other discussion under item 21? On then to item 22, superintendent, principals, activities director, and building and grounds reports. Kale?
We had graduation on the football field. Thanks Tom and Patty, all the effort that they put into coordinating that. It went very well. I've heard by more than one person ask if the football field thing is going to become a permanent thing every year for graduation. I don't know the answer to that. Staff meeting last week. I want to thank everyone that participated. It was Zoom. Lori set it up and we had a lot of staff there. And we got a lot of good questions, things I think that we hadn't considered. And the questions were entered into the chat and we answered those and responded just today. And so we're going to be meeting again soon as a follow-up to that.
Okay. So we've been preparing for the start of summer school. We kind of talked about that. Began today. Teachers reported that it went very well. It was a good day. No class sizes will be over 10 in the academic areas. Today we had 50 kids that came to summer school. Band lessons began Monday, July 6th. As we talked before, they're being held outside one-on-one with the teacher. Kindergarten drive-through graduation is scheduled on Tuesday, July 21st from 5:30 to 7 in the Dems parking lot. The kindergarten teachers are setting that up with the parents and notifying them of that. And I am in the process of setting up some Google Suite trainings through a Google Educator out of Platteville for our different grade levels. So that would be a day-long training on all of the things available to them in Google and getting classrooms set up So I'm working on setting that up as well. That's it.
Thanks, Lori. Aaron?
Just a couple things. Still been doing little bit of interviewing for a couple positions. I think I found a long-term sub that I'm pretty happy with for our English department moving forward. But ACT, you know, we kind of had obviously with the closure, we didn't do the ACT on the testing date, so a lot of our kids were really struggling to find a seat anywhere near for this Saturday's ACT. So we are actually going to be an unlisted host site. So our kids didn't have to travel to take the ACT this Saturday. So Mr. Uppino will be providing that for the kids that wanted to take the ACT this Saturday. So that was a nice piece that ACT did and allowed us to do that, because when I talked to Mr. Uppino, the closest site in Wisconsin was about 6 hours away that had an open seat. So that's good. And then my last piece was just graduation. And well, you know, my thanks to Tom and Patty. They always do a great job getting prepared for that. This year was I think for trying to figure out how it needed to run and stuff like that, being different. They did a great job on preparing that and making it a good event for the kids and the families. Also want to thank Judy Carey, who came and took professional photographs for the kids. And then also Southwest Graphics for the programs. So I think Friday night went very well with that. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Aaron. Pat?
We're doing our July summer contact stuff. So we have a schedule. Volleyball is in the gym 2 days a week. Girls basketball is doing mornings. And then boys basketball is 2 nights a week. We're doing weight room. So we have thermometers checked out to all the head coaches, making sure that they're taking temperatures before the kids enter the school. The one thing WI did sneak in one regulation 2 weeks ago. Anyone in the weight room who is spotting someone else is required to wear a mask. Says right there, all member schools should comply. So Kayla and I met quick and we were able to order masks, reusable washable masks that we've issued to every kid. I see them walk in with them on, they walk out with them on, you know, they're doing just fine with it. So that's proceeding. I've been working on updating our school, trying to get as much coaching information and things in there to be a resource to the public. Make sure that, you know, all that information is located in one convenient spot.
All right, thanks, Pat. Lee?
Just first tell you that the summer cleaners have been doing a phenomenal job. In all honesty, some of the COVID hurdles they've had to deal with, what they've gotten done this summer, they've done a really good job. Really proud of what they did. The lighting project, as you can see, is completed. It was completed on time. Staff coming back this week of summer school will kind of show them how the dimming and the occupancy levels and all that stuff works with them. But I fully expect pretty good energy savings here going forward. The epoxy project with TSR went very well. They got a lot done in 3 days. I encourage all of you to come to the high school and take a look at it. Very impressed with how it was put down and how it looks. So I'm looking forward to a lot of years of use out of that. And then the final materials have been delivered for the parking lot, and I fully expect that project to be full steam ahead here as early as tomorrow. So I met with the last contractor today. Everything is good to go from the change order you guys approved, and we'll be done here in a few weeks.
Thanks, Lee. So that brings us to item 23, which is appropriate for executive session. It includes varsity boys golf coach candidates, JV girls basketball coach candidates, freshman girls basketball coach candidates, fall cheerleader advisor candidates, special education assistant candidates, maternity leave requests, and fall sports volunteer coaches. Those are all appropriate for executive session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C, and Parent F.
Make a motion, go into closed session.
Second.
Motion by Hermanson, second by Chris to go into closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. All right, I'm gonna end the live stream now for anyone watching. We will turn that back on after we get out of closed session.
Thanks, Pat.